All right, we're back. The season's over, but we wanted to come back on and kind of, we discussed that last game. We kind of wanted to give it a little breath, a little room to think like bigger picture of this season. The season's not just one last game or any one game necessarily. So me and Matt are back to discuss a little bit of different stuff. We have an award show we're going to do, and we're excited. Matt, welcome to the podcast again.
Yeah, it's good to be back. We took a couple of weeks to decompress. It was a rough end of the season, which we'll talk about, and hopefully people will listen to this episode now that we haven't put out content in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, they say podcasting, a lot of it's consistency, and we had it very consistent right after every game. We made a point to do our post after every game. So when you guys woke up the next day, you kind of had that thing. I know personally that's how I want to decompress. I couldn't have to look forward to a podcast coming out. So we'll see now how everybody adapts to us doing this every once in a while. Me and Matt really haven't discussed it too hard on what we want going forward. Some of you replied and told us what you want to see, that some of you want to see some episodes in the off season, but maybe not every week or anything like that. So hopefully we'll get into some recruiting stuff and some interviews maybe and different things as we go. We were talking before this, maybe some NBA draft stuff when that comes along. We might kind of me and Matt started this by just calling each other all the time about Auburn basketball news and football stuff too. Oh, I think at some point, that's what we need to add that to our list of things to discuss. By the way, I'm going to add, we have to talk about that last loss. And if it's one of the worst in all of sports, and we'll turn off our thing there, but we'll probably just call each other like the way we used to call each other. If there's some news to talk about, me and Matt will probably try to put something together if we have time in our schedule or whatever. And that's probably how it's going to go until, I guess next
but it's
fall.
been a lot of fun. I think we've enjoyed getting to share it. We've met a lot of cool people. We got to do some cool stuff, which we'll talk about, kind of recapping the season. It was a great year for Auburn basketball. It doesn't take much to be a great year in Auburn basketball history, but it still meant a lot. And I think we're going to have some fiery debates tonight, which I'm really excited about.
This might be a long one, but I'm kind of looking forward to that. Me and Matt have, it was a little exhausting going through the whole season, doing some of it, but now we've taken a little break. I'm kind of looking forward to really getting into it again. All right, well, maybe we'll get started on this award show. We kind of went through and made these top 5 of, we had 3 different categories, a top 5 in plays or kind of in-game moments throughout the season, a top 3 outside of game moments. A lot of stuff happened culturally this year in basketball, and that's probably the biggest narrative of the season, honestly, for me, is how much happened culturally for this. And then also podcast moments. I hope, I can't stand it sometimes with podcasts. People think it's all about them or whatever, when it's really about the basketball or the football, or whatever. I keep saying that. Sorry, we are rusty. I keep saying the F word. So we won't get too crazy about the podcast moments. We thought we had some good podcast moments this year, and we want to discuss it. So I hope you guys enjoy that part too. Matt, we want to start off. We want to go. Are we
gonna build towards? Are we gonna start? Which category are we starting with?
Yeah, let's do the big one. Let's do the big boy, and we'll start from number 5 and go backwards. You want to share your screen on this one?
Yes, let me do that.
I'll announce it, and then actually I won't announce it. I'll say this is the number 5 moment, and you press play, and the people will hear hopefully the moment. We're working on audio stuff, so hopefully you guys hear this. But all right, you ready? And number 5 on the season for Auburn basketball. Nope. Oh. We're still working on it.
I thought you were going to say what it is. You're not going to.
No, I want you to just play it so people can hear what it is. So number 5, here we go.
Off the right
not this
side,
one.
on the wing.
Is it this one? It is this one. Sorry, we are a little weird. We are a little rusty. All right. No, wait, is it this one?
Yes. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, here we go. Sorry, guys. Number 5.
Off the right side, on the wing, KD Johnson for 3, buries it! Auburn by 4 on a 3 by KD! Green is back, Molinar puts it up, it's blocked by Kessler, rebounded ahead, KD Johnson to the basket, head fake up and in with a foul on the play! Woo-hoo!
You hear the woohoos from Sonny Smith as KD saves the day in overtime to secure a share of the SEC title. Man, that was that Mississippi State game, the game before the last game. We were worried that down the stretch we were having issues, and had to go. We were up so much East Bay State. We looked just right. We faltered in the second half, but in overtime, KD Johnson just went nuts and scored most of our points in the overtime, earned an overtime MVP. It's the number 5 moment when we got to secure a part of that SEC championship because of KD.
People forget how dicey that got. Auburn had lost a few on the way in at the end of the season and didn't look great. They, like you said, looked great in the first half, completely terrible offense in the second half, like this team did occasionally. And one guy wasn't scared of the moment, and it was KD Johnson. So as we talk about, some of the disappointments of this season, this was a massive, massive victory to not only guarantee a share of the SEC title, but it set up the game we got to go to close the regular season, to keep it all to ourselves, which I think when we look back at this season, that's a really significant thing that we'll always be able to hold on to. And it's all in part due to KD Johnson's heroics there when everything was going wrong.
In a couple games this year, he's got another moment coming up here in a minute. If we had not done that, if KD had not done that in overtime, who would we be sharing with? Tennessee? We'd be sharing with somebody.
I think it was 2 somebodies. I think Kentucky and Tennessee.
Can you guys imagine the narrative, how different this season, especially after we saw what happened in March Madness, if we hadn't secured a solo SEC championship? It would have been like it would have been shared with Kentucky. This whole season would have been, for everybody else from the outside, would have been, the SEC kind of had a bunch of decent teams at the top, and that's it. There won't be talk of Auburn and all this different stuff. So it was a big deal. Next up, I'll explain this one. I think maybe I'll explain them for each one because it is tougher to know when you're going to say it. So number 4 on the list, Wendell Green in the Alabama game hits the 3-pointer from the logo and winks at the camera.
Quinterly, they need that 3. He doesn't get it to go, and Smith picks up another rebound. Jabari Smith inching towards another big night. No way.
Come on!
My goodness!
Come on now!
That hit the roof at Coleman, and Green brushes off his chest in front of the Auburn faithful. Wendell Green has it tonight.
Rabbi, as much as anything, what Wendell Green brought with him from Eastern Kentucky.
Wendell Green goes nuts in T-Town. He had an amazing game in that game. He had some amazing plays, blew by past people. The play before that was the one where he split the defenders, I believe. This insane play between 2 guys and with the layup with the roll. And then immediately after they miss a 3, he comes back and does a step back, logo 3, gets the heat check timeout, gets on camera. If you didn't see it on the pod, brushes his chest off, winks at him while Jabari's like shaking him. It was just like, people maybe like from a bigger perspective didn't realize, like, at the time Alabama was still pretty hyped up. They were coming off an SEC championship and SEC tournament, thought that they were the basketball school. Their fan base is like nosedived out of it at this point, but at the time they were getting real smug. We weren't quite sure how amazing our team was at that point. We went in there and just blitzkrieged them a couple times, and that was one of those where we forced them to call a timeout. And at the end it got tight, but when he hit that 3, man, it looked like we were ready to party.
Yeah, and don't forget that was the first Iron Bowl of basketball. It was the first time these teams had played this year. So not only it was huge to think about, if you lose that game, now you have to defend home court just to split, and instead you get the win on the road. Honorable mention to Alan Flanagan for his 4 clutch free throws that kind of saved the day at the end of that game. And then we're able to come home and sweep them, which was, I think, a huge thing. Again, looking back at this season, we'll really be able to be proud of, coming off of Alabama's one really good year in basketball last year so far. So it's good to answer that on the court and with the hardware we just talked about with the SEC championship. It was a great moment. That was peak Wendell Green, like when this team was just starting to really get it together and figure things out in the middle of the season.
We're going to go back and look through the whole schedule as a whole at some point in this, but I think there's been so much that's gone on since the beginning of the year, so much that's happened for every team, for the March Madness, for everything, that people are forgetting that coming into the season, Alabama was smug as all get out. The way that Arkansas is being talked about now is so hot. They're recruiting so hot. Is Musselman going to be one of the best coaches in college basketball now? Is he one more year that they were talking that way, or at least Alabama fans were, and some national people, that Nate Oates was on the edge of being great, and Alabama was a sleeping giant and all this kind of stuff. And Alabama fans, oh no, we're engaged now, we're doing all this kind of stuff. And I said it during it. I thought they had a great like stars aligned for them the year before with a bunch of seniors and juniors during a COVID year where everyone that had big time freshmen really struggled. All the one and done struggled. All the big teams like Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, all really struggled in the COVID year, I believe. Maybe not Duke, but I know North Carolina and Kentucky didn't even make the tournament, I don't think. So these teams struggled, and teams that had seniors and juniors did well. They did that at Alabama, and Nate Oates like got all this hype based off of it. And now look at him this year. He couldn't get his team motivated. I mean, they got most motivated for us, and we like really put the foot down. They had some big wins against Baylor and Gonzaga and stuff like that. And like us doing that was kind of a narrative changer for them. If they had beaten us in Tuscaloosa, like they could have turned their whole season around. They had talent. I think a big part of that is Nate Oates could not get them motivated for crappy teams. They lost a lot of crappy teams because they could not get motivated. They got motivated against big teams. If they'd beaten us, then they would have really had a strong resume of we just don't seem to get up for those little ones. But when we want to beat them, we beat them. We kind of like put a dash through that idea that they beat all the good teams by us beating them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they had beaten Gonzaga. They had beaten Arizona. They eventually beat Baylor later. They had some really impressive wins that would kind of scare you, but the more you watched them, you're right. He questioned their effort after every loss, which at some point, like you said, that needs to come back to something internally that's going on. But this was a huge game. And, right after this moment, Alabama went on like a 14-0 run and tied the game. But in this moment, like you said, we were like asserting our dominance in Tuscaloosa with a bunch of Auburn fans that made the trip. As that's another theme from this season, how Auburn traveled so well. And it was a great, the cockiness and the swagger of a short point guard like Wendell Green. He just has, Jared was like that steady, just never really reacted much, and except for that time he dunked on someone. But Wendell just has a little more flair. And
this team was hot. It had a little more swagger than some teams, Yep. But that is part of the thing too. When me and Matt put this list together of like biggest in-game moments, I think it was the moments we had the most fun. Honestly, is kind of what it came down to, because there are some big moments. Like we're going to go through these honorable mentions because we kind of both made our own lists and then compared them. And you talked about the Flanagan free throws down the stretch and how huge those are. There's some of those moments that, unless you're a diehard or you were there, you might not remember. Flanagan hit some really clutch free throws, and it looked like Alabama might have all the momentum. And so I forgot where I was going to go with that thought, but these are big moments. Basically, these are the moments that we were having the most fun.
Yeah,
so
it's a good point, because that's what we were ranking, really. It's like, what were the biggest peak moments of our fanhood watching these games this year and podcasting along with you guys. So there's a couple that get left off. We only did 5, so we'll talk about some of the ones that just missed.
It's the moments you will be pointing back to when people ask us about this team, essentially. What you should watch. You should watch that. You remember when that happened, Mm-hmm. So, all right, we'll go to the next one. The next one's interesting because it's the only one in the top 5 that came in a loss. And we didn't lose very often this year. But like I said a minute ago, to explain that these are when we were having the most fun. The number 3, when KD Johnson got us to double overtime against UConn in the Bahamas. The amazing performance, the amazing awfulness of giving up that free throw to let them go up 2 at the end of the game. But for KD to just put his head down and say, I got this, as a new guy on the team, only like 6 or 7 games in, we didn't know what we had with KD Johnson. And he went out there and went and did this. Here it is.
Or does he just trust his guard?
Oh, too strong. Rebound. And how about Isaiah Whaley? Pauly, wide open 3. Knocks it down. Offensive rebound, set it up. UConn leads by 2.
I don't think he's going to take a timeout. He's going to make a play.
Sanogo, that's good. We're tied. 83 all. Chance to win it. Whaley, too strong. Overtime here in Atlantis.
That was the first overtime, and here comes the second overtime, or the end of the first overtime's regulation.
Bench.
Hawkins.
And he lost the ball. He turned the ball over. 2-point game. Auburn chance to grab the lead. And the drive is good. Who else but KD Johnson?
Keep the ball in the middle, get to one side, turn the corner. Well, his body is so good. His eyes are so good.
Some of the issues down the stretch with KD are what made him thrive in the end moments in that one. it's kind of unbelievable. We were down 2 and they had the ball with like 10 seconds left. I don't know what KD did, some Jedi mind tricks or something to go and take that ball from him. And then, later on in the season, it's kind of thing where we're like, all right, now KD, make a pass over to Jabari or somebody else. And he just went and did it. And after what we've seen at the end of game situations in some of these, after watching that again, you're like, yeah, KD, we don't have a play. We don't have a situation we actually feel good about. I'm glad you just went, and you did that 2 times in a row and saved us going double overtime. And I think that game, even with a loss, was huge for this team's like melding together and saying, we have something special. We got some dudes. We got this.
Yeah. This team was picked 5th in the league. This team was maybe a fringe top 25 team. And a lot of national people who were at this game or watched this game still said it's one of the best games of the year across all of college basketball. It was so exciting. Auburn made a big comeback. It was just tight. So many big shots by both teams. UConn was a good tournament team too. In that early in the season, like you said, this was a group of a bunch of transfers and new guys, and Jabari, the only freshman coming in, and and Jabari had some good moments late in that game too. I remember that he grew up a little bit. It's a loss, and it might be a weird one to have this high on the list, but it really, if you you don't recall that game, go watch like the clips or the game online somewhere, because it was a nuts, insane game that Auburn lost. But it's in basketball, you can lose some games and it doesn't hurt you. That was a classic example. That helped us more than it hurt us to lose that game.
It turned KD into a dude. Before that game, we weren't sure what KD was on this team, and he turned him into a dude that we knew we were confident when the ball was in his hands. He was going to make some steals. He was going to make some plays. It was big for Jabari. Jabari had he had a really not great first half and went nuts in the second half and in overtimes to show us kind of what we saw the rest of the season, where in the moments we needed him the most, he went out and hit a bunch of stuff. Down those stretches when we were down, this guy went and got points. And that's what happened in this game too. And looking back on it, you might not think a lot of this, you don't realize how much we didn't know about this team. And honestly, how this team, we all kind of think oh, of course it ended up being great with all these star players, everything. Things could have went any direction. These guys could have not had the chemistry. These guys could have, not built the confidence that they needed or whatever. And this kind of game is the one that, you learn more from your losses almost than you from your wins sometimes. And this one, I think, was one they really learned from.
Yeah, totally agree. And it was just cool to be in one of those tournaments early in the season that it was a meaningful game over Thanksgiving.
We'll have to add that to the list of what our schedule looks like next year, because I don't think we have a cool Bahamas one, because I think they really grew up during that tournament, and it kind of sucks that next year we're not going to have quite that same thing.
Yeah.
Well, next up, number 2 on the list. This one's a little tougher because I'll just say it's Walker Kessler's triple double against LSU and our 18-1 start against LSU. So it's both that in the same game. It's tough to get a Walker Kessler triple double. And we'll talk about it after we listen to some highlights real quick.
Down the lane, Kessler to the hole. Yes! And a foul on the play! Rebounded by Flanagan. They've gone 9 minutes without a field goal in this game. Allen, right wing three. Good!
They're only getting one shot also. They'll have to call timeout right now.
18-1 Auburn. Listen to the crowd.
That was an amazing moment to start the game for both those periods, because people forget maybe too that LSU was undefeated at that point. A lot of hype, the Will Wade, all the recruiting and everything. They could have come in, and it showed our team, which was in the same situation. It was the first SEC game. It was kind of crazy. We thought dang, we got to start with this one against LSU. We couldn't start. I guess we did start against. Did we start against South Carolina? Actually, no.
LSU was first.
So it was the first one that was just wow, we have to go against another ranked team in this thing, an athletic team, and we just blitzkrieged them at the start of it. I don't know how else you want to call it, but we did that thing we wish we had done a lot more down the stretch, where we just confused the mess out of them. Brought so much energy that they just couldn't handle it. We also had no idea. Walker had a couple moments, like at the Bahamas, he won MVP against Loyola Chicago, and he had a couple more moments. Okay, he was doing okay, but we weren't sure what we had with Walker yet. We weren't sure, okay, he's blocking a couple shots, he's a big guy. His offense, we're not sure. And for him to break out a triple double on his first SEC game against a ranked undefeated LSU team was huge. And we knew we had a dude, and the second ever triple double in Auburn basketball history. really insane stuff coming out of him.
In conference play. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we'd have to go back and listen. I know for me personally, I was very hesitant to say how he would do in the grind of the SEC. How would he do against bigger teams, more athletic teams? And that was just such an unreal performance from him, where he looked completely comfortable at home. He was ready for the moment. He looked athletic against an LSU team that has a bunch of athletic grown men, as Scott Van Pelt likes to say, adults. And Kessler was just great. And I mean, going into that game, I still had like on the, me and my love affair with Jalen Williams, I still was like, well, maybe we need to play Jalen more at center if Kessler can't really handle some of the up and down nature of these games. But I mean, obviously that's ludicrous once you started seeing him play like that. But you're right. It's so rare to have a player, he elevated his game significantly as he got more comfortable with our team. And as the competition got harder, he got better. And that's so rare to see like that.
People don't realize too that like he did all this in conference play, honestly. Like when you talk about to national people, it's about Walker Kessler. Like, sure, there are triple doubles. Sure, like there are people that have this many blocks and average 4+ or whatever. But man, he's doing this in SEC play. Like zoom out, take it. Like you can't, it's hard. I wish you could just take out his out of conference stats. It's hard to find that stat, honestly, of just conference play stuff. He was killing it. He was doing, even because his out of conference was kind of timid, he was good, but he wasn't what he was when he entered SEC play. To take that next step, wow, against way harder opponents was really crazy. He ended up with 2 triple doubles this year, which is also another crazy number. A lot of people have triple doubles against really crappy teams. He did it against a ranked LSU team and another Texas A&M team that almost made the tournament. He also won National Defensive Player of the Year. Just amazing to have the best freshman in the country, one and done, maybe number 1 pick, maybe top 3 pick, and the Defensive Player of the Year. Man, what a combo.
Just terrific. I hate that, we'll get into this more, but he's officially leaving. I think everybody kind of saw the writing on the wall as he had such a good season. And a lot of his parts of his game do translate really well to the NBA. Man, just such a fun. I don't know if there's been another player. I just think he's a unicorn. I think he's so unique in how he played. And I really think he's going to get even better. His endurance, his ability to just play 30 minutes a game and be so involved in every defensive action we do, like everything funnels towards him. How many times does he have to guard the pick and roll and make a decision of how high he's going to hedge out on the guard? And he just felt like he never made mistakes in that area. He rebounded better than I expected. He scored better than I expected as the season went on. Just a great kid. It just seems like such a fun. I don't know if you saw the video that they put out today of his like farewell, and it was just a little emotional. Just like this one season in Auburn has completely changed the narrative of his basketball career. It's put him in position to have tremendous success at the next level, and he's very appreciative, I think, of his decision to transfer to a blue blood.
Yeah, there we go. I love it. You will have to get into that when we're going to talk about players leaving and players coming, because the UNC fans have just lost their absolute minds since they did their little NCAA run. So interesting thing to say about all these I finally announced the last one. So KD winning the SEC title, that was, a big one, securing it. Everyone after that is kind of these moments where we found out another great thing about this team. When we could go into Alabama and beat them the way we did, or at least beat them at all. Really big deal. Next step, that like we are some dudes and we are competing for the SEC championship. The KD against UConn, we have a team. These guys are hungry and going to do something, and they're coming together. This Kessler triple-double against LSU in 81. Yeah, we can do it in SEC play too. And these guys are stepping up into SEC play also. This last one, the number one, in my opinion, was the peak moment of Auburn basketball in our season. And the drum roll, number one moment, the Cambridge dunk against Kentucky in Auburn Arena.
Cambridge looking for an inbound. Does Jabari up? Yes!
Oh, what an out-of-bounds play. We've been hurting everybody with that play.
Auburn by 3. Mintz goes baseline, drives on Cardwell, missed the shot. Rebound by Auburn. Tigers on the break. Green ahead. Cambridge to the hole. Dumped it.
Got the numbers first time today. On a run.
Timeout, Kentucky. Listen to this roar.
God, I love our radio calls. It's so much fun. Me and Matt, most of the year, at least I did, had the radio call for a lot of it. So I could listen to Sonny and A&D on the radio with a speaker. Hate that we didn't get to hear it in March, but man, what a moment. We've heard a million times because the national media and Kentucky fans would not let us not hear it, that they were up like 9 or 10 or something like that near the end of the first. And we kind of came out the second half roaring and going on our big run. And that was the real exclamation point where we took that game back and said, nah, this is our game. The fans are in it. You can't handle it. And Cambridge did that a lot of times this year, but this was the biggest one when we finally got on our, and like, this was kind of the last bit too of when we were going on these runs. The defense was smothering and we were breaking out and running the ball and you couldn't stop us because we were going too fast for you and we're dunking it on you. And this was one of those last ones, honestly, kind of sadly, but we thought this team was that. And Cambridge threw the ball down and the crowd went nuts and it felt like vindicating, like, screw Kentucky. This is our year. This is a special year and no one's going to stop us.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because if you watch the video, it's a good play. It's a good sequence, but it's nothing crazy. I think what went into it, it's CBS, national television, Kentucky at home. We knew we had something special. And now you look back, right? If we don't win that game, you are splitting with them. And every win just matters. And I think we started to feel that. And there was this, we started really bad in that game. I don't know if you remember, it was really rough offensively. Kentucky just looked a little more talented, which they probably are overall. And Auburn chipped away. And then that second half, like you said, we kind of avalanched them. And people who were there say it's the loudest they've ever heard that place. There's something, even just watching that again, like there's something about the decibel or it sends chill. I got chills just watching that again. For me, I was at the Nashville Auburn Club's watch party, and I'm sharing this story. Just I think everybody had this moment during this sequence. Like I'm sitting at a table with one of my friends across the way, and somehow as that sequence is finishing, I'm like standing up. It's like one of those high top chairs. I'm standing on the legs of the chair, like with my shaker, just like going nuts in this restaurant. And there was just something therapeutic about that whole run and taking control of that game. And it is a sign of respect for Kentucky because you kind of are judged by how you handle them. And Auburn's beaten them, 5 or 6 straight times at home now. So
it was a lot of build up to that moment too. There was the whole Pearlville night before, the smack talking in the media, the getting the CBS, the #1 ranking on the line that we should have gotten the week before, but they made us go, just like the March Madness run a couple years ago.
I forgot about all that.
They made us go through the Blue Bloods to do it. The disrespect we were getting, the fans were nuts. They stayed up all night to do this kind of thing. Everyone in the Auburn fan base, no matter how like neutral you were to basketball, if you were never even watched the game to begin with, you watched that one, and we needed the moment. And then you also have this tension of all that, and then to go down early and to feel this like, what if all of this comes to a loss? Like you kind of had to sit there for a minute. We were down 10 or so, like midway through the first, when we were like, what if all of this that we built up and the smack talk and the coworkers we told the game about and everything, what if it ended up in a loss in Auburn Arena? How deflating. And for us to have that huge comeback and finally break through the way we thought of ourselves as a team, the kind of team that would break through like that, to finally have that it just all came together in one moment, kind of right there.
Yeah, it's a good one. Man, it's fun listening to those calls. I think, when the season ends badly like ours did, I'm glad we're doing this because it's easy to you forget some of these really cool moments that we got to experience because for most of college, all but one team in college basketball, you end on a loss, and it's just it's just hard. The tournament's hard. It's hard to win a bunch of games there. But man, so many good. I think our podcast was really good about being in those moments in the regular season and focusing on how hard that is to win. And that was a huge step. And man, this never gets old. Never gets old seeing Auburn Arena like that on that stage. I forgot that was right after Pearlville and game day, I guess, and all that. Like, just crazy. It was an awesome moment.
Yeah, it was. That's why I got #1. Our top 5 was #1. Breakaway dunk by Cambridge against Kentucky. #2, Kessler triple-double against LSU, and also that 18-1 start against LSU. And #3, KD Johnson's heroics against UConn to get us double overtime and bringing that team together in the Bahamas. Number 4, Wendell 3-point leads to winking at the camera. What an amazing moment. I love that call. Even I wish we could get the radio call, but it was a good call from the ESPN crew too about scraping the top of Coleman Coliseum with that 3. That was great. And KD, and number 5 is KD saves the day in overtime to secure the share of the SEC title. That one was tough when we thought we might not get that SEC title, and he went in. I went nuts in my apartment here. We wanted to give a couple other honorable mentions here, and I'll just put them all together, and you point out some stuff at the end, and we can talk a little more. The way we put together this list was we both just wrote a bunch of moments off the top of our head of like the biggest moments, and then we ranked them, and I like added them together, see who's is what. So these other ones, the other 2 that actually got votes from each of us, Matt voted for the Flanagan 4 free throws against Alabama that were really huge. I voted for the Jabari dunk in the NCAA tournament. Amazing dunk from Jabari in the Jacksonville State game. Cambridge's dunk off the backboard against UGA was insane. We'll be talking about Cambridge for sure in our section later about people that have left. Leroy Berman's 3-pointer against St. Louis. Man, it feels ages ago when he hit that 3 at St. Louis, man. Kessler triple-double against A&M. The fact that we had a player get a triple-double and it didn't make our top 5 list is really another testament of how great this season was, when there's only been 3 now in all of Auburn history. Scoring 100 at home to sweep Alabama was huge. That's going to make
how's that not on the that's how good of a season we had.
That's going to make a moment later on in one of our other categories, I believe. It's kind of like a best actor, best picture kind of thing. It didn't win best picture, but it might win best actor, And Jabari Smith gets hot against Vandy from 3. That was an amazing game where he scored 31 points and just the kind of game we thought he could do, and he did do. And it was sad that he kind of had to do it against Vandy at one point. We'll talk more about that stuff. The last 2 are big comeback against Ole Miss. That was a super fun one where a lot of fans traveled. And the last one is KD saves the day at Missouri when we had.
That was not fun. That was
until the game against Miami. In the last game, it was the worst game we'd had all year, and we pulled it off and still got that win. And there was still some excitement there now that you can pull back further, Anything from those you want to talk a little more about?
No, just a lot of great moments. I'm glad we were looking at that list. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm sure you all are probably having moments too. Like I'm thinking about the Georgia dunk from Cambridge. I was at my sister's house in DC, and I think I talked on the podcast, it got me off the couch. Like there's very few moments that get me standing up, and that when I saw it coming in open court, it was incredible. What stands out to me a little bit is the sweep of Alabama, which we'll talk more about, but the road wins. I know this team got a lot of flack for how they struggled on the road at times, but man, they just had this way of pulling out wins, even when it wasn't pretty, which is what you have to do to win on the road. And they ended up with the best road record in the SEC, as ugly as it was at times. It's a lot of character, a lot of grit in this team. So that's cool.
All right, we're gonna have our next category. Our next category is moments outside of the game, kind of these cultural moments, and that's probably honestly bigger than the moments in the game almost. And we'll have to talk about that. And part of that's because we didn't, end up with a ring in March or anything like that. But these cultural moments, I think, are going to stick with us even longer than the in-game moments, because we created something this year. The Auburn, it was Auburn, the other sport that everybody was into, and well, now it's basketball season. We'll get into it and we'll watch some games and get excited or whatever. But it feels like now we have an Auburn basketball fan base, and it has its own culture and its own fans, and it has a life of its own. And so these are the big moments from that. We decided to do a top 3 instead of top 5 for these. Number 3, the big moment, we just got done talking about it. Crane kicks and brooms against Bama. Man, when Jabari and Cardwell and somebody else hit the crane kicks right at the end of regulations at Alabama, it was huge. It was hilarious that they all were so adamant about it. And then to do it in the locker room, they had some amazing pictures where it was doing the crane kicks. And then to come back, sweep them, have the broom with Bruce Pearl, amazing photos and videos of Bruce holding the broom, going in circles, and then hitting the crane kick also. Man, the swagger this team had at one point this season, and the fun we were having, and when these guys are freshmen and transfers, but they get it. They get that it's that important to the fan base. And sometimes you're afraid they're not going to get it, but this team got it.
It was the definition of the peacock thing, right? That kind of took the thing by storm. I think the Iron Bowl really brought that out. In the other sport that we played Alabama in prominently, Our team was giving Alabama some of that during the game, and then their receiver did that when they won the game in 4 overtimes or whatever. So, and the cool thing is, like you said, our guys, including a 5-star who's going to be in the NBA soon, was in the student section for that other sports game and remembered it. And those guys, all the basketball team would go to those games and support them and be college kids and have fun in the South, like go to a whatever that sport is called. And it was cool to see that carry over. Like they brought that, they were ready because that Tuscaloosa game with the Crickets was the first one. So they did that knowing you have to play them again in a couple weeks at home. It really personified the Peacock energy for me.
It also showed like those Alabama games were, we have them on the list up here, but like ultimately Alabama's not very good this year necessarily. Like they were number 6 or 7 in this season, but it's kind of reminding you how smug their fan base had gotten after last year and how they really thought they had done something that we cared that much at the time to put them down. But because it was a pressure to show them where they're supposed to be, and we did it. So now we're like, yeah, of course that's where they're supposed to be. Man, you lose one of those, the whole thing changes a bit. They start hearing they've given up. It feels like they have like gone back into the depths a little bit from where they used to be talking about how they're big time basketball. Now they're back to doing their whole thing where they're like, we never cared about that anyway. Next one up, number 2 on the list of kind of cultural moments in outside of the game for Auburn basketball. Number 2 is the Twitter memes. Man, everyone absolutely loved the Twitter memes this year. It seemed to really gather a huge amount of Auburn fans in to have a good time. It made a lot of noise nationally too. You saw a lot of stuff on Reddit and different places just being like, what in the world is going on? The choice to do deep fry memes. I still don't know if I know how it happened. We interviewed Pablo, shout out to Pablo Escobar on here. Go back and listen to it if you want. I don't know how we ended up with deep fry, but I love the surreal deep fried stuff. And so it feels like that was another one of those like checks, like we have our own culture. We're doing a thing. We're here, like another peacocking moment where it's like, this is a thing,
It caused quite the scene too. I mean, I know some people in our fan base started doing this a couple of years ago, and it kind of had this grassroots thing, and it just kind of grew. And obviously with this team, it became clear early on that they were going to win a bunch of games. And especially during that winning streak, it just took on a life of its own where everybody was doing it. I mean, everybody was in on it. It was offending other fan bases. It forced Murray State to not post the score until Tevin Brown finally did, which is one of our honorary mentions. I think just the fact that we all just crushed Murray State for weeks on Twitter until one of their players put up the score on his Twitter, and now we're best friends with Murray State and we support them and all that. Like it just, you're right. It created this unique fan base experience, and it really caught, I think, pretty much everybody in media's attention. Like I think almost everybody knew about it. And honestly, one of the best moments was when we lost and people started, the question was, what would you do when we lose? Well, it was like kind of encouraging roasting memes of ourselves, like in the loss. It was just fantastic on so many levels. So shout out to all the people who were really involved in kind of getting that message out and like making it fun. It was just fun to be part of that group. And for me, like Twitter's always been a space for me to just be around. Even if I don't tweet a lot or do a lot, I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing the action, if you will.
I think we were winning culturally along with the game, and it engaged people and made people, this whole like taking over the Twitter stuff and made people feel like a part of the team this year.
Yeah.
You could be like, I think a lot of Auburn fans have always felt a little weird about basketball or something like, well, yeah, I'm a fan, but I feel bad that like I haven't been a diehard fan all my life, or I didn't go to every single game or whatever. It really engaged a lot of people to feel like I am a part of this. Like I am interacting with it. I am like supporting, like I am like making up for lost years. Like it felt like people were like felt the winning along with it. Like they were a part of this thing. And I think that's huge to keep people engaged and to make a special moment for everybody. The last one, the biggest moment outside of the games, and it's huge and amazing. Pearlville. We got to really show people on national TV and with the spotlight on us that these fans are insane and into it and locked in. We had student correspondent Matt Plexico following along with it. The insanity of all the tents setting up like over 24 hours beforehand, the kids having fun out there, the kind of Woodstock feeling, the Woodstock 69.
The provisions of all the Auburn families sending stuff in and donations and people bringing stuff overnight, like just all that.
yet another way that it felt like from all over the country, people were engaged and felt a part of this and brought into this whole idea of being an Auburn basketball fan. The chaos that broke out, the cold weather they sat through, man, it was amazing. I felt like it was part of like an epic story almost, and just really cool. And it seemed to also solidify this idea that we need to do some more renovations and have people donate money, and kind of like it showed the absolute passion, like the peak passion we could have, and what this whole team could be like on an every year basis if we wanted to be. And I think winning that game and doing that really like was another like stake in the ground or concrete poured of like a foundation for this team and this culture.
It also just shows incredible demand. I personally love the size of our arena. People kind of say it's small or whatever. It's very loud. It's a great home court advantage. And when you're in a smaller town I know Auburn's a big university, but it's not as big as a lot of our competitors in the SEC. Like you create demand with scarcity, like there's only going to be a certain number of students that get in. So you better be like committed. You better be in. And there are so many hundreds and thousands of Auburn students right now who really sacrificed a lot of time to be in line, not just for Kentucky, for all these home games. And you go undefeated at home, and even the growth of the fan base in terms of basketball IQ, and just it's a hot ticket. We were very fortunate. I had a friend who gave us tickets at what they paid for them buying season tickets through Auburn, like as faculty. So it's really cool to see all that. And I think Pearlville kind of like demonstrated that on a lot of different levels.
And I think it helps everything, not just the big games. Now that there's that much demand, people will go nuts for the little ones too. These little out of conference games at the beginning that might have been half full or whatever, these like Vandy games or whatever, they're just not that huge. People are excited to be there because this might be the only one they get to go to. This might be like the moment for them, So I think, that's right. Showing all the demand was a huge deal. And it was just super cool to see. And we felt like we were living vicariously through it, just following along on everything. We wish we could have done something like that when we were in school. Coleman was a little too big for that,
I did fun fact, just to illustrate the difference here. I went to me and some friends lined up. We were first in line for an Iron Bowl in Beard Eves, one of the years I was at Auburn. And we brought like a little grill and we had breakfast, and there were literally 6 of us, literally. And I think we got there at, I don't know.
You want to shout them out? Who are they?
Oh, it was probably Josh Sells, Tommy Kidwell, Matt Kosmala, Cole Garacki, and a couple other guys. But there were like 6 or 7 of us. We went there at 6 or 7 a.m. for like a 2:00 game or something. And literally no one was there until like 11 or 11:30. And we just had fun. We hung out, but it's really so cool. Like you were mentioning, just to see it from our perspective when we got to visit and seeing it through Matt Plexico and stuff, just makes me really proud just as an alum and somebody who's cared about Auburn basketball for a long time. And I hope the students felt that this year. There are a lot of people. There's people who are just jumping on the bandwagon. That's fine. But there are people who look at that with a lot of pride, like how good of a home court advantage this is and how much we are taking advantage of this new arena that's, I think, perfectly designed for Auburn, for what Auburn is.
And I was going to bring that up too with the size thing. I've gotten to arguments online about this too. Like some people are trying to like dunk on us or be like some sort of insult that it's small or something like that. Like we were just ahead of the curve, honestly. We did this, and Ole Miss did it with the same architecture firm. A couple years later, Alabama's going to do the exact same thing, I think, with the exact same architecture firm. Baylor's doing this. Baylor's coming off a national championship and shrinking their stadium. It's just how it is right now. You want to have an intimate basketball kind of view. It's the same thing. It's going to happen in the other sport too, honestly. These people that built their stadiums to 100,000 plus in the last 10 years were dumb. I called them dumb when they were there. Everything's been falling. Like you want to be smaller and better quality. Texas is even doing it too. They're going way down in attendance also on purpose because we create an amazing environment. Everyone's known it for a long time. I mean, the OG is Duke. We knew what we wanted to be doing. We were very smart. And I've had a lot of friends and people from outside of it comment on how great it is that our student section's on the camera. It looks amazing in there. And we did that right. And other people are starting to follow suit. So if you hear any crap about that, like we did this. We were finally ahead of the curve.
It's the only time. I was going to say, it's
Yeah.
the only time in Auburn's history we were ahead of the curve and right on something. It's amazing.
Yeah, we are not known for that. Well, that's the top three. Top three. Number one was Pearlville. Number two, Twitter memes. Number three, the crane kicks and brooms against Bama. Another vote we got, it was the number one ranking, first time ever. It's crazy that we can be ranked number one first time ever, and that didn't make our top three. But that was huge. Another moment this year where we got to like make that check mark. And after what happened in March, just so huge to get these check marks and these cultural like foundations set. That was a big one. Another humongous one that's just tough to like put on that list, but is like probably what we're going to look back on. And these other ones built to this moment when the Nevilles donated a huge amount of money, renamed the stadium Neville Arena, and is building this foundation and culture. The Bruce Pearl got signed, I think, around that same time. It's not on our list, but I think you could put that the same thing with the Neville money and everything like that. We are building, like, hopefully the sad day when Bruce Pearl leaves, that was built. We built something that doesn't get knocked down easily. We could go through another coach that maybe doesn't work out, but we still have the facilities we need. We still have the culture we need. We still have kids maybe having kids at Pearlville, like these people that hopefully have these memories in their head now where they feel like we are a part of it, and the Neville money was a big deal in my opinion. We'll come back to that, or we just go ahead and say something if you want.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the perhaps look, if now that the season's over, I think you can pretty clearly say it's huge to win the SEC championship regular season all to ourselves. It's huge to be number one nationally for the first time ever. It's huge that we got Bruce Pearl to sign what amounts to hopefully a lifetime, as long as he wants to coach, contract. Like that has to be the third, at least the third, or maybe the second, maybe number one, honestly, of all the things. Like
I guess we didn't like think about to put it on there necessarily because we didn't expect him to go anywhere, honestly. Like it's huge to sign that lifetime contract because he could leave at any time. Things go sour in a different year or whatever, So like I think we knew, the people that follow along enough, that Bruce wanted to be here.
We did, but Louisville comes open in the middle of the year this year. That's a team with more basketball history. We can argue, but like that's going to happen and so now I feel like it just lets everybody, tells recruits he's going to be there for a while. It helps, like you said, we can keep building it, and the money for a new practice facility and some other things. The biggest donation in Auburn athletics history, which
for basketball. So
that
can't underline that enough,
Yeah. So I'm glad you put that on the list. That's big.
Another thing too, the interesting with the Bruce Pearl signing and all that, like there's a certain amount, like as much as you like where you work and you feel like you're making good money or whatever, there's like making that raise. It's not always about the money. It's about respect. And the fact that Bruce gets another sign from us, another like almost like a relationship of any kind, another like, we appreciate you, and it makes you work that much harder. I mean, like it's not even about sometimes getting that award, even if it's not a money award, like it makes you work that much harder to feel that there's a real thing going on. So I hope that's the same thing with Bruce, that like this is another like shot of like rejuvenation of like, you are in the right place, we got your back, you chose right, and like it's another step.
Here's another one related to Bruce. I believe the first time at Auburn he's gotten SEC Coach of the Year.
Wow, it's so tough for him to win these. There's just a certain undercurrent of people that do not like Bruce, this establishment. He's just not part of this establishment. So annoying. He's so great for the sport. He should be promoted more. I was going to bring that up too. I don't think he's ever going to win National Player Coach of the Year at this point, because you have to kind of not come out of nowhere, but you have to have this certain like winning with a team that maybe we weren't supposed to do it. But he's recruiting so well now. There's such a hype that he's almost going to be a victim of his own like. Every year there's going to be a certain amount of hype, and unless he wins like a national championship, he's not going to get it. Like it's the whole idea that people do not seem to understand how far down Auburn was and what he's done. He's just not going to win. There's not an award he can get for like, how did you ever do this? No other coach should do that. But you're going to get these guys, the Jay Wrights of Villanova and different places that like, they're going to always be good too, on a team that should be good anyways, and they're going to end up winning the Coaches of the Year half the time, and he's just it's annoying. The other ones on the list are College Game Day, huge. We didn't have it at all until a couple years back against Kentucky in 2019-20, I believe, before the pandemic. So that's huge. That's hilarious. Like just another sign of where we're at, that we can get College Game Day. It's just like an afterthought. The whole Murray State Twitter rivalry friendship thing. We talked about a little Twitter was hilarious and fun for everybody. KD, this is when I added on here. KD wondering where the St. Louis fans went after we beat them was great. It was our first like big raucous away game. And it was great to see the videos after of like our teams having a little swagger and KD going in there and be like, I want to say bye to the fan. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Because they were being kind of dicks the whole time. Kessler bucket hat was hilarious. It became a fashion icon. All the kids loved having those like tie-dye bucket hats they had. I love when Auburn athletics and the marketing department or whoever does this stuff really like jumps in early on different stuff like that. It's great to see the deep fried memes in the student section. I kept meaning to like pull out our Pablo Escobar quote about how we wanted to see in the student section, how they were there like a week later. Last two are KD goes Super Saiyan, just the fun cultural memeable stuff when KD would just go nuts after he would hit some stuff or steal some stuff and look so crazy out there. We never thought someone would look crazier than Cardwell out there, and he did. And the last one is the peacocking stuff. I mean, we talked about it all beforehand. Maybe Peacock should have made it in there somewhere, but just the like idea that we were going to peacock, the idea of like NBC sponsored shirts and different stuff in the stadium in our last game while we were there. Like we were ahead of the game and being Peacocks fans before St. Peter's run. Man, just so many cool moments from outside the game, the cultural stuff.
Yeah, no, that was kind of, there's so many things. I mean, I think that's what I'll always remember about this season is, yes, the championship, and yes, these players, I think we'll always have really fond memories of them, but there was this year just felt different. I think it will kind of stand alone in history as like this combination of coming out of COVID and being like a normal season, the accomplishments, the players, the online stuff, the fact that we did this, like I think there's going to be a lot that flow. Like I think this year will always be special to me, at least. It'll always kind of stand alone in some ways.
That's a good point, because we're about to go into podcast moments. I hope that our having a basketball only podcast is part of this, like setting the foundation and cultural moments. I hope for the listeners out there, this became like a part of the game, that you listen to it on your commute the next day or whatever, because that's part of the reason we did the podcast. We felt like this team and this like entire basketball athletics, this program deserved its own podcast. There's so many Auburn podcasts out there, but they will talk about football. They'll talk about the F word 80% of the time. When our basketball team's going number one, they'll spend 10 minutes talking about whatever at the beginning and then not talk about basketball for 5 minutes. It's just, it was really annoying to us. So we really wanted to like talk to each other on here and give the fan base a little, hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it.
Well, and I think you would agree. I'm not saying we did anything, but it is cool. There is a slow shift in the media coverage. Guys like Justin Ferguson on the Auburn Observer, he made a commitment before this season that they're independently run. I love his work, by the way. Go subscribe to Auburn Observer. He's great. He made the commitment. We're going to be 50-50 between the two main sports. And there's nobody else that's really done that, that's on his level, that's made that actually commitment in terms of stories, background stories, like the coverage that each game gets. And I think, so I feel like it's getting better as the program is being more solidified. There's more options, there's more sources, but it still lacks. Like, I still don't think Auburn is, especially the traditional beat, the beat writing, for so long, it's just been,
I feel like they're scared. I feel like they're almost like to the point where I wonder if they're a little scared because they don't understand it as much and they're afraid to like throw their opinions out there as much. But it killed me. I mean, I got kicked off of one of the message boards for complaining about basketball coverage in the podcast world out there. And so that's part of the reason we did our thing, whatever. And I mean, in the last couple of years, I've joined some message boards and asked recruiting questions and different questions about the coaching staffs. And I just cannot seem to get any beat writers to cover this stuff or to get anybody to comment on it. Shout out to Hooks45, whatever his thing is on 24/7, because they should pay that man. He is the beat writer. He's the guy with the information. It's just crazy. It took the basketball, the like beat writer message board, like, man, it took until like that Kentucky game for them to pay attention to really like, turn their sights towards it. And we were like, where have y'all been for the last like 2 months of amazing basketball?
I'll tell you. And you're kind of, you jumped into the Twitter thing a little bit this year for the first time. I've been on Twitter for a long time. Guys like Will McLaughlin, guys on Twitter who are just regular people like us who just really care about Auburn basketball. Like Pablo kind of got to that level. Obviously this year he was already a big deal, but now like that is more good info and like timely info because they're pulling from different. So like that's the best place to get Auburn basketball. And I think that relates to the Twitter memes, and that's what's kind of created because honestly, if you follow the right people, Jay Phillips, who we had on, like
shout
people
out
like
to
that.
Bruce Blog, shout out to Jay.
If you follow the right people, you'll get all that news probably quicker on Twitter than you will from any of this traditional sites. So
I can't cancel my 24/7 subscription. I've tried to cancel it like 10 times. I've tried to call them. They will hang up on you. So I'm not trying to go in on 24/7, but I'm a little irritated that I cannot figure out how to cancel that and that they do this like shady business. So
if you're keeping score at home, Jackson's been kicked off of one and he decided he was going to leave 24/7 after being kicked off the other one due to some undisclosed topics. And now he can't cancel because
due to censorship. It's crazy. I can't believe it's like bull crap that I can't cancel. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. But
this
more
is
coverage
free for the people. This is free.
Yes. All right, let's get into the podcast moments because this is the kind of stuff you're getting for free that no one else is even doing out there. All right, number 3 on the list for best podcast moments of the year. I hope you guys listened in and heard some of this. What are you shaking your head about?
How is this number 3? This is such a cool moment for us.
Because we got so many cool moments this year.
I know. Go ahead.
Number 3 on the list of coolest moment that happened to us this year in podcasting. The Sonny Smith interview. You guys got to check out that Sonny Smith interview. I did a ton of research. Matt did too. We got into it with Sonny. We got him laughing. He was getting us laughing. We went deep into some of his stuff. He was hilarious. Shout out to Sherry for setting that up. It's like it's on YouTube too. It's one of our most listened to YouTubes and podcasts, and you can listen to that anytime. That's no like specific, like it goes way back in his career. We got some really interesting stuff, and man, I hope we get him again. Let's do it again. I heard he's we told him in the podcast because there's just so much cool stuff to cover with him that he needs to write a book, even if it's like an audio book. Get somebody younger, somebody else to just write down what he talks about because his life is way more interesting than just the Auburn stuff that we like to talk about and just the color analyst stuff. He goes way beyond that to become a great, just like American story. And I heard on a different podcast, they interviewed him a couple months after us that he might be working on a book. So I hope that he's working on that. And maybe when that comes out, we can get him to come on again or something like that.
Yeah, it was amazing, right? For us who grew up Auburn fans and stuff. And for so long, Sonny Smith was the one era. It was before our time, but it was the one kind of golden era of Auburn basketball. I think Pearl's probably already surpassed a lot of that. But just to have him still part of the program, the commentary stuff, like you said, it's just a treasure when you get to hear listen to the highlights of the games after the games were over. Typically, while I was waiting for our podcast to upload, I would go try to listen to Andy and Sonny's, the highlight package they put out. Just a great guy. And we got him pretty early in the season too. And it was just kind of validation for us just to kind of take it seriously. And just so we got to talk to someone that we really respected. And I think it was definitely one of our better interviews that we did. And just something I'll always remember. I love that we wore suits. It was so much fun.
It was turning a corner. Like we talked about this different moments for the team and the culture. It was a turning moment for our podcast to go from like just kind of an after thing, like us trying to rustle up some people to interview in the SEC preview and stuff, to get Sonny was kind of a big moment. Like, no, we can do this. We can ask like clever questions and get people engaged and really feel like we're documenting something special and like not a professional manner. Like we were telling it from the fans' perspective, but hopefully in a manner that like does interviewing somebody like Sonny Smith justice, so that's number 3. And number 2, we got to go to the South Carolina game, the last game of the season, and see us cut down the nets for what, our 3rd SEC championship ever? Second? Fourth SEC championship ever. We got to watch the whole insanity around cutting the nets down, Carbo doing the worm out there, the confetti, the Jumbotron doing his thing, just man, the whole just going to Auburn. I live up in New York. It's been a while. And I said erroneously on that podcast after the last time I'd been to a game was like 4 or 5 years ago against South Carolina. I actually went to the John Morant Murray State game over Christmas break, and I got to watch Bryce, Jared, Chuma, and other greats from that Final Four team play against John Morant in Auburn Arena. That was cool. I remember hearing that like, oh, there's an NBA guy on the other team or whatever. I had no idea how big that ticket could have been, So it was amazing to be back. Great atmosphere. They had little foam fingers that look like close your ears, kids, dicks. It was the whole thing. It was hilarious. I need some good food, man. It was just really cool to come down for that. And we were planning on going to March Madness games and stuff. And there was a whole big thing all year. Like, what are we going to make it to? What game? I have to make it to a game. I told everybody else, you got to make it to a game so you can see Jabari, so you can see Walker, and their only year they're going to be at Auburn, so you can see the special team. And finally, right at the end, Matt had some great connections, and I got to come down. And thank God I got that check marked off because I was holding my breath for a Sweet 16 in Chicago or something. So I'm glad I got that in.
Yeah, no, it sometimes things just work out in your favor, like the way the season ended, it was rough, but you could kind of see it the last couple of weeks. It was pointing towards that final home game, and that just happened to be the game that we got really good access to tickets, and it worked out for your travel schedule to get down there, and we got to hang out some. And I mean, it was just I had never seen Auburn cut down the nets. I wasn't there for the Elite Eight game against Kentucky in the tournament a few years ago. I wasn't there for the SEC regular season championship that they won. I was there for the SEC tournament, so I guess I did see it. But seeing it at home on this special season, to have it all to ourselves, we were tracking the other games while we were there to see what would happen. We had to win, obviously, and we did. And it was just a perfect cap to the whole season until what happened after the game for our number one.
And they did the confetti, right? I want to give a shout out to the confetti guy, because a couple years back when we won it, there was confetti falling too early, and they'd like postpone the game for a minute to clean up confetti, and they still fall. I love that line from Michael about how it still falls sometimes. And this year they had them in like a cannon that spit it up into the air instead of coming down from the rafters. So shout out to something going wrong and then learning from it. I don't always trust that Auburn's going to do that. It was good they did that. And another fun part about going to all that is the people we got to see. We got to see Sonny Smith at the game, get a picture with them. Got to see Wes Flanagan, Coach Flanagan at the game. Saw some other people at the game. Got to hang out with
Michael Floyd.
a little bit. Yep. Saw the blonde hair from student correspondent Matt Plexico. Man, we just had a good time at the game. And for someone like me that lives up in New York, I know some of my friends, shout out to Ryan Norm. I got to see Ryan Norm, my friend from high school that goes to all the games. It's like he lives in Auburn. He gets to go to this stuff. Like, I mean, like every game's a big deal, but so you get to live there. So you get to go to all these things. For me, man, once a year, maybe, it was just a huge deal for me. So, and to me, watching on TV all year from a distance seems like it makes it almost seem bigger, like you almost respect it even more when you're further away than like when you get there and you're reminded like, oh yeah, it is kind of a small town. It is like, but from far away, it's this like magical thing,
Mm-hmm.
But our last one, the number one for podcast moments, we never saw this coming. I'll do number one when we did our live show from Toomer's Corner with the trees rolling up, and it just so happened that Derek Hall and Dylan Cardwell came by and talked to us. No plan there at all. Dylan just was riding a scooter in perfect Dylan Cardwell, do it all Dylan fashion. He was scooting through Toomer's Corner with the net around his neck, and we just yelled at Dylan in our podcast. And I thought he would just maybe dip his face in. We get some pictures. No, he sat down for like 45 minutes. We got to discuss some really cool stuff. Go back and listen to it. There's audio issues.
Yeah, the audio is not great. This is one of those for us to be able to talk to Dylan after winning the SEC and all that hard work. I think I'll always remember that. Just the conversation that us three had that may, parts of it may not have gotten picked up perfectly on the audio. We apologize for that. But just selfishly for us, that was super cool to get to see two people that I really respect, and they have clearly like a significant, not just two random players, but a very significant couple of people on campus that really have embraced the college experience and are leaders on their team. And they kind of are not to sound like old people here, but they appreciate the student athlete experience a little bit, and they're making the most of their time with the influence that they have on campus, and they're really good at their craft. So just really cool that they just kind of stopped in and talked to us, so
yeah.
Really
you may
cool.
not get to see another guy like Dylan Cardwell in this new era for a while. You might really need to appreciate a guy like Dylan. Hopefully he turns out like the way we're thinking is the kind of guy that's really an ambassador for the school and sticks around for 3 or 4 years and becomes a guy on campus and grows with the team and grows as a player. It's not going to happen as much going forward. We're already seeing all the repercussions of all these rules, different things they've not thought through or whatever. But super cool to have him and a guy that clearly appreciates it. And man, when we planned that out, we just thought, why don't we do it live at Tumors? It'd be kind of cool to do in the background. Maybe we'll maybe some people will stop by or something. We had no idea the stuff that was going to happen.
What about the guy that stopped by? Is like, hey, I was just listening to y'all. That was so cool for us.
I meant to find that clip and shout him out. And I can't remember what it is. Shout out to you, man. Maybe I'll post it on social media if I can. Just cool to get recognized. I think I put that on our list here of getting recognized on campus was cool. It's just cool to be part of the Auburn world,
And Tumors was beautiful that day. It was a beautiful day on campus. It was just like we had dinner that night later. It was just a lot of fun. I'm really glad we got to do that, just for you and I to hang out. And obviously we got to do the podcast along with it. And we got to clinch something that I think we'll always be really proud of.
Yeah. Some other big moments from this year, the podcast, man, we just had this podcast, man. It was just supposed to be me and Matt talking really. If you go back and listen to some of our first episodes, we're very much just we're just here to have some fun, talk about Auburn basketball and whatever. We don't know. We don't really have any thoughts about how this goes. Man, if you could have told me all this stuff was going to happen by then, I would have thought you were crazy man, anyways, here's some of the stuff. We did an SEC championship preview with Michael and Bruce Blog, Jay Phillips, really fun time, just hanging out with them and getting some cool quotes. Got to interview legend KT Rell, got to interview legend Anthony McLemore, got to interview legend Horace Spencer from France, got to interview Coach Stephen Pearl, got to interview Coach Wes Flanagan, got to interview Pablo Escobarna from Twitter and get the whole meme stuff. Got to interview Marlene Navor, very cool director of communications. Hopefully, I'm going to see if maybe she'll come back and give us another big review of the whole season. Man, the amount of interviews we got was crazy.
Let's stop there for a minute. I mean,
okay.
Just the fact that we got to talk to all those people. I mean, for you and I just know you and that. I mean, that made all the effort worth it just for us, just to get to talk to these people. I thought, I don't know if any stood out for you. I thought Anthony McLemore was tremendous. Everybody did. I mean, it was fascinating to talk to everybody who's been around past teams and this team. But if you had to pick a couple, Stephen Pearl's interview was amazing. Anthony's was amazing. And Sonny Smith's was amazing. I think those were the three that stand out to me at the end of the season. I was like, wow, I had such a good time talking ball and their careers with those guys.
I think I've gotten the most feedback from Stevens that there's some really good stuff in there that they were all super open. It was just really cool I felt like we, me and Matt grew as podcasters or interviewers or whatever, along with it we got to feel like we really engaged with these people and got information. I guess it's easy, when we're not beat writers or whatever. I always criticize why can't you just ask that question? Why can't you just do whatever? I feel like we did a good job of asking things people wanted to know that have not been asked, it feels like, without stepping on too many feet or feeling rude or anything like that. And it's funny when me and Matt put the questions together, Matt's always a little more, are we really going to ask that? Are we really going to do that? So yeah, hope we got some interesting stuff for everybody. And then just super cool to get all those interviews.
Well, and then we had our geographic, you and I have lives. So we traveled a little bit. I know I had a stretch there where on Saturdays I was wanting to watch this team with different friends, who are close by. So I would end up doing it from somebody's basement, or that one time I had to podcast in the car outside a restaurant that I was having dinner with my aunt at, which was really stressful for me. You popped in from Bermuda. You went to Bermuda and left me alone for a week. And we had great guest hosts that jumped in. Shout out to Bobby Dyer and Ben Young. And so it took time. I mean, we had fun. It was never really that much of a burden, I don't think, other than the late nights for both of us, you on the East Coast especially. But it was just, I hope people, like you said earlier, appreciated just that instant reaction. That's what we wanted. I know a lot of times it was going up late because it takes time for us to do our episode and then get it up. But we hope that was helpful and helped you enjoy the season more,
Yeah. And big shout out to Matt, because it was huge for me personally. I don't know if that came through in the podcast or not, that during this Omicron wave and all that, I canceled a bunch of travel. I was supposed to go to a bunch of sure, I ended up Bermuda, but I was actually supposed to go to a lot more places. It was kind of going to be a season of me traveling a lot. And we were trying to figure out what we were going to do about co-hosting, what we were going to do about when I was on like time zones in Europe and everything. Like it all got canceled on me. So I was already a little depressed about all that kind of stuff. So the fact that I had this to look forward to every Wednesday and Saturday, this team was so good. The fact that I got to get together with my friend Matt and record stuff was like huge for me during that time where I was looking for something to do, some sort of outlet. So shout out to Matt for doing this with me. So it's other stuff. Yeah.
We balance each other well too. I think just like the questions, I'm a little more conservative, a little more, less aggressive probably, but I think we ended up in a really good balance there. I think we balanced well on the episodes. We have different opinions, but we're close enough that we can share those on the team and everything. I think it's, and honestly, I never would have done it. It was just your idea from the beginning. And I had a little bit of experience, at least doing some stuff like this before. And I think it hasn't been perfect. It hasn't always been great audio or just the best quality, but I'm pretty proud of, what we were able to do.
Yeah, we got a couple more on here. I could say, before we'll do another wrap up at the very end of this too, where we get all emotional and cry about the end of the pocket. No, we'll probably do that. But
no, we're keeping it going. I think.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere, I don't think. But the last couple I had written down were hilarious moments. I think just from some feedback from some friends that have listened and stuff. The fact that everyone disagreed with me about the heat check timeout from all our experts, and the fact that I won't back down from it, even though these people with way more experience, they get paid millions of dollars to coach basketball, disagree with me. I'm still adamant that heat check timeouts are a thing. Interviewing or getting student correspondent at Plexco to follow along Provo. We talked about that already. It was cool for me and cool for social media and cool to like feel vicariously living through that. Kid correspondent Luke, when he had the whole great viral video about being the #1 team in the world, he came on and talked to us, and to see him get to meet the team and stuff was really cool. And then the last one was getting recognized on campus by some of the kids in the front of the line was cool. And somebody while we were recording was cool. Somebody said they recognized my voice. They were wondering where they'd heard that voice before or whatever. I'm sure they probably like, being nice or whatever, but it was still kind of cool to just feel like we were a part of things.
That was Jackson's slightly vain goal for this podcast, was just to just wanted to be able to like feel like you had a little something in Auburn, that like this little slight, and we did, like, the fact that we were able to go down and be around some of the students when we visited for that game. I love that I have a picture with Sonny Smith now. Like, we just had these moments that were really cool. And I think for us both being out of town, not in Auburn, I think it was neat to be able to have that trip and kind of see some validation for the time we put into it.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be all our awards we have here. Man, just a really fun season. We'll have some more things to discuss. We're going to keep going. We got on early because we wanted to kind of just talk through a lot of stuff. Me and Matt, usually before we did this podcast, we just call each other all the time and talk through stuff for an hour or two at a time. I'd walk around New York City and talk to them about whatever was going on with Auburn. So I think we've been, at least I have been a little bit like holding back on calling a little bit, just because I knew now that we're so used to recording it, it's a little, I don't want to like spill all the beans yet about our, I think we have some heated discussions on how to build a team going forward. And we've been texting about it. We've both been kind of holding back on our opinions and being like, we'll record it. So our next thing, we did the award show. We talked briefly about the overall MVP. We did our little math on MVP and found out that Walker Kessler had the most MVPs, which is so super interesting to me, because there's the back and forth on a guy that gets NBA draft stuff. They get so much more hype by the media, but overall Walker probably had the bigger deal for our team, and he ended up with 10. And because we did win one more game, the Jacksonville State game, which I believe we put Jabari's MVP. Walker's still ahead. Jabari's right there behind him. That's kind of like par for the course on this year. It was a 1-2, 1A, 1B situation, so just huge shout out to Walker again on the MVP stuff.
It almost feels like, Jabari was the clear alpha of this team, I would say, from about the last month on, as he kind of developed and grew up. He's clearly the offensive MVP, right?
Yeah.
And Walker's clearly the anchor of that defense that was so good for most of the year. I think they both, maybe it's fitting. We say, well, the overall MVP, Walker probably has more. And I would say like Ken Palm does an MVP for every game, which is one of the more respected analytics tools. Kessler has the most there too. So we're not crazy. I think he probably did have the biggest impact, but I do think we shortchanged Jabari at times due to his crazy high expectations for what we knew he could do. But I think by the end of the year, it was pretty obvious. And Walker struggled a little bit after he got hurt and kind of down the stretch. I think overall, if you look at the year, Jabari for me is kind of the most valuable piece of this team.
I don't think either player could have been what they ended up being without each other.
Yeah.
I think there's like a thing there where it's like Walker ended up winning the whole thing, but he got a lot of pressure taken off of him by Jabari. We never criticized Walker's offense too heavily because Jabari was the offense guy. But remove Jabari for a couple games, and we are like, Walker, you have got to go score 20, 25. You've got to like be the alpha. And that just wasn't him. Same with Jabari the other way around. If Walker's out for a couple of games, we're going to ask him to lock down some more people. We're going to have to ask him to be a little more like a big deal on defense. And that's just not going to happen. As much as Jabari was really good. They're both really good on the other side. They were just greats. Jabari was greats on offense and Walker was greats on defense and good on the other side. So I just think both of them took the pressure off of each other. There was a lot of moments where people said, who's going to guard either one of those? That maybe they could have, like, if they didn't have them both in the game at the same time, a guy could have switched around or whatever, so just a big deal.
Yeah. It's hard to argue both of them. I think you're right. And it was cool to see their relationship too. They clearly got along really well. Jabari, I think one of the coaches we talked to mentioned that, maybe Steven. Jabari was one of the people calling Walker saying, hey, come play here. Like, I want you to come play here. I think you're really good, and I think we saw they just had a really good, they played defense really well together as the two big guys inside. And it's a bummer that we only got it for a year, but I mean, that's what happens when you have elite players.
Yep. Well, I was going to need you to maybe pull up the schedule for this year and we just kind of vaguely go through it real quick. I just think it'd be interesting to see what our attitudes were for some of these games, little moments that pop up for us, and just kind of like I feel like you could maybe section the season kind of into a couple sections of like the out of conference, we go through this out of conference here. This USF game was really interesting. The first away game played in Tampa. Yeah, pull up one that's got a little more.
Yeah, I don't like that. I went to the Auburn Tigers one.
You can kind of see some stuff maybe that happens earlier in the season that's like echoes of what's going to happen later in the season, attitudes, the way this team was. It was really, I think it'll be interesting to see early on how we thought we were one of those teams that would take on other teams and like turn them over and fast break and really like smother other teams. And down the stretch, we did not at all. We're going to talk about some of that stuff with the teams. And Matt is just having the biggest issue getting the schedule up over here. But I think that was our attitude, our the way we played early in the season. It really dropped off. So let's see.
Pull this up. This is the one we've used before. This one should work pretty well.
Cool. I think that USF game is one of the first interesting ones, which is what, 1, 2,
third game,
right? Is there one above that or no?
Exhibitions.
Okay, yeah.
And those are the tournament ones.
Okay. Yeah, that outside Florida, Bruce likes to play some of these weird away games that I don't like necessarily, but supposedly that South Florida one was in the same place we played in Tampa for the SEC championship. And man, something's off about that arena, because I think it was the worst offense performance we had all year, right? We won, but we only scored 58. I don't think we scored 58 again.
It was until, in terms of like metrics and shooting, it was the worst until the Miami game. But yes.
Yeah. So clearly we had some issues in Tampa, but that's one of those things where we had some repercussions, kind of thing. That UConn, amazing to do that, the next game, double overtime. Loyola and Syracuse didn't make the tournament.
Loyola did. Syracuse didn't. I grew up. I've talked about Syracuse was my second team when Auburn was so bad for 15 years and not making the tournament. Auburn was always my favorite team, but I got into. So it was really cool for me just to watch those two teams play. I don't think it had ever happened before, at least in my life. So that was just a fun tournament over Thanksgiving. It was a lot of fun to have a game the day before Thanksgiving, on Thanksgiving, and the day after Thanksgiving too.
I think a lot of people had fun with their families. I know I did, watching those games and kind of engaging maybe some older people in your family and stuff that hadn't been paying attention to basketball, and I think that helped a lot of people get into it, to have that, like, those moments with their family to kind of see what was going on. Even though I'm sure if you're like me, you're irritated the mess out of by like some opinions like some like non-basketball fans would throw out there about what needs to happen and what needs to change. I think we'll be having that again next Thanksgiving, maybe.
So then we beat, UCF and Yale, and I just want to stop right there. So we're 7-1. And then that week was the week that the NCAA came out and gave closure on, hey, y'all have already self-punished, and we're going to add some little 2 games for Bruce Pearl. And but it was kind of that closure of like, okay, like what we did worked ish. You can debate whether, I know you really hated.
Well, no, hey, it's a bigger deal now that we've seen what happened to Will Wade at LSU, that they haven't even dropped the punishment yet. And their team has been eviscerated. And they went out and got a good coach too. But good luck. Is the new sign of the times, and what people were afraid of, that if something like this happened, you would essentially get a death penalty because every player can just leave. And it's kind of like really crappy. You don't want to like screw kids that like signed on and didn't realize it was going to go down, but also screw some of those players because they signed on to a Will Wade they knew was doing this crap, and screw LSU too for sticking by their guy for cheating and doing all this. So like they do deserve a death penalty. They won't give them a death penalty. So the fact that they're going to end up with kind of a death penalty-ish thing just because of these new one-time transfers or whatever, they deserve that. I mean, they should be like dismantled as a program right now. So,
and I also want to point out, we had a close game against South Florida. We had a close game against Loyola. We had the UConn loss, but after that, we started really like asserting our will, and we had the win streak started after UConn, but we beat Syracuse by 20 something. We beat UCF by 17. We beat Yale by 20 or 18. We killed Nebraska in Wes Flanagan's head coach game.
Can we talk briefly about that? That's a super interesting like tidbit from this year that I think people are not going to remember, which is ultimately a good thing. I think I didn't add to my list because of the whole. I think it was insane that they punished Bruce Pearl for 2 games. Such a stupid punishment. That's why people get upset with the NCAA. Like after all the crap we did, and Kansas just won a national championship, they've had 0 punishment for the exact same crap that LSU was doing in other places, paying players hundreds of thousands of dollars to come to their program, and they're still not punished yet. They haven't even gotten their like thing. But anyways, it's just a cool tidbit that Coach Flanagan got to do a head coaching thing against Nebraska, and the coach Stephen Pearl got to coach against North Alabama. And the fact that they beat those teams so badly is amazing, because otherwise that might not be a tidbit. That might be, well, we have to explain every freaking time that it's because Bruce Pearl wasn't there or whatever, and it really took away the sting a little bit of the bullcrap of NCAA giving that 2-game suspension, because we struggled in those games. Then all of a sudden that like suspension was like a little more of a punishment, like.
It worked out really well for us timing wise. We were able to get Bruce back for that St. Louis road trip, which came up next when he was back. Big win, didn't play well. Jackson's the biggest Yuri Collins fan in the world. He was a tremendous.
Come on, bring Yuri Collins, man. He's led. I said at the time that I want Yuri Collins. This is the kind of crap. I hate that it has to be like this now. It just is. We play another at a conference team, and they have a really good player. And in the handshake line or whatever, you got to be like, hopefully we see you next year, because that's just how it is now. That's kind of like the future. You want to treat these games almost maybe like, yeah, let's go play against all the minor league teams and try to play against teams that have players we might want later. And Yuri Collins led the nation in assists. He was amazing against us and was so annoying to play against because he was so good. And then he ends up leading the nation in assists. I hope, he's not in the transfer portal yet. I really don't know what the rules are. The rules don't seem to matter. I don't think they actually matter. I don't think you're supposed to contact players until they're in the transfer portal. It is happening. There's back channels or whatever. I hope we're going after Yuri Collins, because we need to go for the best players, and that guy's good.
He is very good. Tevin Brown from Murray State was the next game. He was also a good one. He ended up going to the pros, but
he had a really good game, and everybody wanted him to come to Auburn. In fact, people were really just penciling him in already, that he would go in the transfer portal and he would come because we really need a 3-point threat. He's a good 3-point shooter. And there was this brotherly love thing with the Twitter stuff. And he's from Florence, Alabama and all that. And he went pro, and it's not, no. Some of these kids work out. After seeing Jared Harper play so well and leave early and seems to be just blowing up the G League and can't seem to get more than 5 minutes in a game, isn't in 3 years now. So I don't know. I always hate to see these players leave early, especially the NIL stuff now. You can make money in college now. Now it's not NBA money, but it might be better than G League money. So.
Yeah. So Auburn's 11-1 going into SEC play, playing that undefeated LSU team. They added a win over Oklahoma later in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. So 12-1 with the only loss.
Still haven't lost at home.
Yeah.
At a conference in a really long time. It's a huge deal.
It is. You're right. That's one of our favorite stats there. So then the only thing I wanted to point out, we talked about LSU. I think the thing that was impressive for me was winning those first 3 games by double digits. It kind of set a tone We beat LSU. We went to South Carolina, won by 15, which we kind of have a difficult history there against Frank Martin's teams. Beat Florida. I was at that game.
R.I.P. Frank Martin. He's gone now.
Yeah, he's at UMass. He's moved
Really?
up close to you.
I mean, he had played an interesting style. I'm glad we don't have to play him anymore. And they also had a player that we're looking at in the transfer portal. It is the white dude that was hitting good threes in that game. It's so crazy. This is just how it is now. You like watch all the games because they might be on your team the next year. So.
For real. So we started out 3-0, beat Florida. Then that huge win at Alabama we've discussed. I think we've already talked.
This is where it ends, right? That Alabama game, that Florida game, whatever, is like the last time we really had that personality of smothering defense that turns people over and we go on the fast break. I don't think after that there was really a lot of like.
No. I think we did. I think we did a good job. We were the Flying Tigers against Ole Miss in the second half. We blitzed them.
Fair enough. We were down against Ole Miss.
We blitzed Georgia at home. We killed them. That was a much more of a blowout than the score of 23 indicated. And then we had Kentucky. I thought we played great defense and kind of gave them a lot of trouble pretty much that whole game. Then I point the Kentucky game as like we finally got to number one. We won our game day. We had Pearlville. And then starting with the Missouri game, which was so ugly in a lot of ways, we still won thanks to Katie Johnson. But after that, it felt like it was never quite the same. The Alabama win was great a week later at home to sweep them. We beat Oklahoma pretty good. But I really feel like that Missouri game and kind of that point where Zepp was sick for a couple games, and we
figured that out. Was that COVID? There was a time because we didn't even talk about this early at a conference. I talked briefly about how it was good for me with Omicron wave. There was cancellations. We didn't miss a game. There was like craziness. We thought, oh no, it's 2020 again. And then I think college basketball just decided kind of that we were done.
They did.
Kentucky, I think, admitted like pretty early on in that wave that they were just going to stop testing. And so did a lot of other people, and we just kept going. I don't think after a certain date, there was no regulation that came down. It's another bull crap on the NCAA that they didn't want to like get involved. And so it gave this like weird competitive advantage to play the people, like a race to the bottom, basically. And we just like, I don't think we stopped testing at some point. And people like Flanagan went out for a game or two, sadly, right as he was coming back with COVID. And then when Zepp got sick, it was a sickness. And that was all we found out. So,
they called it a non-COVID illness, but who knows if it wasn't.
Maybe that conspiracy theories. That's why we down the stretch couldn't quite turn up the thing. Everybody had a little long COVID or something,
Well, yeah. I think, without turning it into a COVID thing overall, I think our whole society has kind of mirrored that in a lot of ways, even from our government down.
Sports lead the way sometimes, isn't it? It's really
for sure.
It shouldn't be that way. Celebrities and sports lead the way sometimes.
And the thing I think I said on our early podcast was just like, there's no way the NCAA is going to allow there to not be a massive tournament this year. That's where all their money comes from. There's just no way. I don't care how bad COVID gets. They're going to find a way to do this tournament and be full tilt by March. And they did.
I'll give it to them. I think it's society and everybody else is like, nobody's too mad about it. So it worked out. Yeah. Maybe it was a little ahead of where I thought, I know my opinions are different than a lot of people that probably listen to this podcast. So I'm going to stop talking now. We're done with the talk. Sorry, guys. Sorry. That Ole Miss game, go back to the Ole Miss game briefly. We were down like 15 or something on the road earlier. It was one of our earlier away games. And it was like, oh no, is it going to be like this again during away games? And down the stretch, we did have issue all during the year in the away games. But we had a year or two before that where, man, it felt like we could not win away.
Well, we had issues. We had issues and we were winning. And I think that's the thing you and I are a good job of we do a good job at saying just in college basketball how hard that is. And again, you just keep saying it. Like, you can talk about how we were rough on the road as much as you want. We had the best road record in the league.
Yeah.
And we weren't tied with.
It's the difference between 2019, 2020, though, where that team was just absolutely miserable away. It was crazy. They would win at home and be a good top 15, 20 team, go away, and they would lose by 20 to anybody that wanted to play them. And so, it was a big deal. This team would go down 15 and come back in that one and get a couple more away wins. And basically, had away wins against all the bad teams and losses to the really good ones, which is just how it is in college basketball.
Well, and think about how different this season would have gone if Auburn loses to Missouri and then almost loses to Georgia on the road, which would have been Alabama did that. We almost did it too. And, but that's the difference. We were 10-0 at that point in the league, like after that Georgia escape. If you're 8-2 there and you've lost on the road to Missouri and Georgia, and you're going to Arkansas and you've got some really good teams waiting, like we don't win the SEC. So as frustrating as those games were, I think it did say a lot about this team that they were very comfortable in those late moments, even when things weren't going well. And then I think you saw that tends to be
balanced
a 50-50.
out, didn't it? It's like that luck metric on
Yes.
Kim Pom, where like, we were probably overachieving on the luck metric on Kim Pom in the first half of the SEC, and then underachieving on the second half. We kind of got the karma back a little bit.
Yep.
We lost that. We can keep going, but that Missouri, thank God again for Katie John. Now we realize how important every single one of these games is. I wish we still had we meant to do the math to see SEC champions. How many losses do they have in the conference? We ended up with 3 losses. It's the fact that we were that hard struck. I really want to see if I wonder what the average is for an SEC champion. Is it 4 losses? I would think it's about 4 or 5, and that 3 is like a higher level SEC. So the fact that we were like gonna share if we lost 4 seems a little tough.
I think it's probably 3 to 4. I think it's probably closer to that.
You would bet like a 3.5 is the average or something. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough. So it's just that hard to win the SEC, guys. You played that hard, and you still got to go away at top 20 teams like Tennessee and Arkansas that are really talented teams.
Yeah. So we had the Arkansas game. We're 10-0 in the league. We've won 19 games in a row or whatever. And
we hadn't lost in regulation. We hadn't lost in America. We hadn't lost away or home.
It was great.
If we beat that one, if Wendell gets that last shot or whatever, the narrative on this season changes again. That because at that point, that we don't lose again until at Florida, and it's like this insane, people would be writing us in as like one of the best teams in a long time.
Well, and I just want to point out how, just as somebody who's watched college basketball for so long, I just find it hysterical that Auburn lost on November 24th before Thanksgiving, and then didn't lose until February. I mean, they went 2.5 months without losing a game, which is just insanity in the league that we're in, and the schedule that we had. So
big moment. Another one of those checks off. We had a team storm the court against us and had what they described as the best atmosphere they'd had in 20 years at their game. And I think they played Kentucky before us too. Then they described what we had as for them, it's the best atmosphere they'd had. Like that for them was like a moment, which sucks because we'll have to talk about a little bit about like the direction these programs are going. Feels like another moment for them where they were like, we are back as a program. We go nuts for these games and beat number 1 teams and recruit all these 5 stars. Like they had a moment for us, and it was kind of cool. Not cool. I wish we had freaking won, but it's a good sign of the times that other teams are having their big moments against us. So
if you watch college ball, when you're the number 1 team and you're going on the road to a historically really good basketball. Okay, maybe they're not historically really good. We can debate that, but they are one of the. It's not going to South Carolina. It's going to Arkansas. They have a good team. I was a believer in them from the very beginning. I thought they were going to be.
They had a weird year, right? They lost they were a hyped up team. They had a good run, and the thing before that, they've been recruiting really well. Musselman's clearly got them going a little bit, and they lost their first 3 games. One of them was to Vanderbilt. And 2 other bad teams.
And A&M.
Thank God they're not. They're going to be just like Alabama. They're not. They're paper tigers. Whatever,
Well, but I just think going into that game, I think Auburn was like a 2 or 3 point favorite. So like that Arkansas game, all the smart people thought we would lose it. Like if you were paying attention, if you paid. Yeah, it's how college basketball is. The one that was more troubling, we beat A&M, we beat Vanderbilt at both at home. We kind of got to. We thought we had some things figured out, but man,
shout out to triple double. Shout out to Jabari going off. It's so cool that every game we can pretty much point out some cool moments. There's not a game on here that probably can't point out something cool that happened in it. Maybe that Oklahoma one was a little more of a snoozer, but it was just good to win it.
Yeah, the Florida game I think was the first time I started to get actually pretty nervous, just because you started to really see some of the flaws. Like that was the game Jabari had 28 of our 62. I mean, he had a good game, but no one else could do anything on the road offensively. And that was just not the case a few weeks before.
I'm sorry, guys. I left the country and this team just fell apart.
It's all your fault.
Chuck in that Nebraska game called it out, and we were calling it out before that we could have these struggles if we're going to shoot bad shots all the time. But we were like, oh, it's just how it is. We're that talented. We're running people off the court. Then we stopped running people off the court, and we kept shooting badly and couldn't seem the guy, the like Achilles heel of our guards all being really small became a thing. They started getting run around and pressed and having issues. Our 3-point shooting just like fell apart. Like after we go through this schedule, we have to go through some like kind of talking about what happened, like what were the fatal flaws, like, is it like, because being talked about part of it, you said like after that Kentucky game, it really does feel like after that, even though there were all these wins, it felt different. It felt different. And you can't tell if it was maybe the pressure of the number one stuff got to us. Maybe teams like had enough film on us at that point. Maybe some of these like, like maybe the grind started getting to them a little bit. It wasn't just the number one, but it was the fact that they were like working that hard to get that. And then they were like, dang, we got like 15 more games left. Like, and they couldn't quite like bring that same, like,
I think you said it best. You said that St. Louis game feels like an eternity ago. It does. And think about for these kids playing 2 games a week for this long at that level, with our intensity, right? The way we want to play. And Bruce said in his postseason kind of postmortem, like, it's not an excuse. I just think the grind did wear us out a little bit, and we need to do a better job of like, finding ways to avoid that. I think the other thing you hit on that's very wise is just people about, halfway through the conference season, they've seen all your sets. The scouting at this level is so good. All the assistant coaches we had on talk about they have teams within the coaching staff and managers of who scouts which teams. They go in depth. They know what the team's going to run before when they call out a play, they know exactly what it is.
Did Missouri figure out how to scheme us and everybody followed suit? Because in that game, that seems like the first game that the pick and roll lob to Kessler was just gone. It wasn't there at all. And no one else was doing anything. And that's when because I don't think after that, I mean, sure, we got a couple more in, but man, before that, it was automatic. We were getting several of those a game and it felt like unstoppable. Okay, well, sure, choose to do that. Choose to do the other one. We'll just do the other one. And then somehow they stopped all of them. So.
I think people just wisely made a decision. They said, hey, we are going to keep the ball out of the middle of the floor. Like it's fine if Jabari hits all these shots, but we cannot have Wendell Green dancing through the lane, scoring 20 points, lobbing to Kessler. We have to defend inside first and trust that this team can't make shots. And I think that was a big part of the adjustment. And I think you just had guys there. Sometimes I was amazed at how well Wendell adjusted as a small guard coming in this higher level of play, but it's a different beast doing it for 35 games, as you go through the whole season.
He got a little hurt in that Missouri game too, right?
Sometimes you just hit a little bit of a wall athletically and just like playing at this level. And when you have a bunch of newcomers like we did at this level, it's just, I think that may have played a role too.
Didn't he get a little banged up in that Missouri game too? You always wonder with some of these players, if you'll find out after the season's over that someone was dealing with a nagging this or that. I think we heard about that with Samir after the Final Four run, that he was playing with some sort of wrist injury or some ankle injury or something. You might find out later on that Wendell was, after that game, he dealt with a little thing for the rest of the year. I think we probably would have found out by now. But
and I would just point out, if you're talking about, it's kind of this irony, right? We wanted Jabari to assert himself and become the man, but the problem is, right as he became the man, like, look at this. We're looking at this on the screen right now. If you go back through all this, Wendell, Kessler, leading scorers, I'm looking at KD Johnson, Jabari, Walker, KD, Jabari. Our last, 7 games, Jabari was the leading scorer in the regular season.
You wonder, we brought that up in those post games too. Is it's like chicken or the egg? Is like he asserting himself too much, and so it's like killing the chemistry a little bit, or is it because the chemistry is so gone and these other guys just can't seem to make anything? He has to do something like this, And I think it's more the other one that he had to do that stuff because everyone else had just started to fall apart.
Well, and I think there was a little bit of a loss of confidence from some of our players. They got a little tight.
Wendell admitted it a couple of times that he was going through something he had to figure out, and he never did figure it out, I don't think.
Yeah. So I think Jabari just picked up the slack and did the best he could. there's been absolutely nothing that's come out about him that said he's anything less than like the perfect teammate and like the least selfish guy and all that. I think it's just, Bruce said it, all year we talked about depth and athleticism, and our athleticism kind of didn't look as good down the stretch, and our depth just didn't look as strong as it did for the first 2/3 of the season.
And another interesting thing, I think you talk about the clogging, the lane thing. Another theory that we kind of, I think, settled on a little bit is the three position being so bad at shooting threes that like part of the options of Wendell going into the lane is at first it was like, okay, you either stop Kessler or you stop the Wendell. And then they say, well, we can stop it all if we just clog up all the middle and he can't even do any of that. Well, the other option for that is to kick it out for these open threes, hopefully, because you have a guy trying to clog up the lane, that three position, and you have two guys. You have the three that can't hit a shot to save their life. I think Cambridge ended up with like below 17% or something like that. Definitely below 20%, whatever it was on this in conference play. Flanagan really struggled too. And then you have a guy like Jabari, amazing guy. We barely ever saw a catch and shoot. There was a ton of ISO threes from him. So I don't know if he was also not that great at kind of getting open on the three line a little bit when Wendell was doing those kind of drives. The three was open, and we did it. We did it a lot. They dared us to do it. We did it, and it worked because we didn't hit that shot. So
well, and if you're paying attention, and it does get way more advanced than this even, but if you're preparing to play Auburn at this point and they're 21-1, you're playing 22-1, you're playing this Auburn team, they're ranked number 1, whatever. The scouting report probably should look like, hey, you can help off everybody else except 10. Like, don't help off Jabari at the 3-point line. But if you're guarding Flanagan, KD, Zepp, like, we'll live with it. Like, we know they can shoot, but we're dealing with Kessler at the rim, we're dealing with Jabari on the wing, and then Wendell. Like, we'll let all that other stuff go. And we kept waiting on some guys to like take that, make their open shots basically. And Jalen did towards the end of the year, but that was it.
Can I give a shout out too here? So that's kind of theories a little bit on what happened down the stretch a little bit. I feel like we ended up doing that. We could talk a little more about it, but another shout out to, you said 7 games to Reverend Jabari Smith. Let me tell you these numbers. We just grew accustomed to it a little bit, but we're going to look back on this and just be like, wow. And again, in February 16th against Vanderbilt, these are the last like 7 games, 31 points, 28 points, 15 points, 27 points, 27 points, 21 points, and 17 points in the SEC tournament. Man, he scored back-to-back 27 points, and he had a stretch of 4 games where he went, a stretch of 5 games where he went 31, 28, 15, 27, 27. Insane. That's crazy numbers.
Well, and how about this? Last 3 road games, which we really struggled in, at Florida loss, at Tennessee loss, at Mississippi State won in overtime, 28, 27, 27. On the road, when you need your best player. He almost got us back in that Tennessee game single-handedly. I was there for that one too.
He had a couple almost annoying ones, in my opinion, where he would go off and hit 2 or 3 or 4 threes right down the stretch when we were down like 10 points. And it was like, just hit those earlier. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, but it is a shame that we never really, he had 1 or 2 looks at like last minute shots that weren't easy shots by any stretch, but we never really got that like buzzer beater, like Jabari moment that you really wanted.
This might be a good moment to talk about that. Our end of game stuff really faltered down the stretch. It's an issue that goes many seasons, honestly, under Bruce. Like, yeah, and it's funny, anytime you want to talk about any kind of issue at all, wait, you think you do better than Bruce, or Bruce, blah, blah, blah. It's like, listen, he's a human being. There are flaws. Like, we can talk about it as fans when there's issues, and we have end of game issues, and we won them early on. KD put his head down in double overtimes and went and got points, but those weren't a play or anything. The Missouri game, he would just went down, put his head down.
A lot of times he was disregarding what Bruce wanted to do.
Yeah. The Georgia game where Wendell just went down there and charged a guy and scored it. They didn't call the charge and we won, so that was good. I mean, I don't know if the guy's foot was in the thing or if they was moving, but it wasn't a pretty play. It was not a smart play. He just went down there and scored and won the game. That's just good. Arkansas game is where we started losing these games at the end of games or whatever. Wendell, I think he shot like a logo 3 at the end of regulation, which is the most frustrating thing that's so consistent in college basketball. Like, holy shit, can't really blame Auburn necessarily. You saw it all through March. You saw it all during the year. You're down nothing. You're down 0. You're tied. and you shoot a contested NBA range three. It's so dumb. Just freaking drive the ball. Oh my God. And so we lost that in overtime. We lost the Florida one the same way, but at least in the Florida one, like you were hoping in these games we would you can lose some games in these, and it's fine. You just gotta learn from them. I don't know if we ever learned anything from these in the game ones. At least in the Florida game, we at least got the ball to Jabari on one of these into games things, which is a big deal because before that we couldn't even get the ball to him, and we finally got it. It was like a contested NBA range also, but at least it was in Jabari's hands.
Let me ask you this: you are a notorious hater of almost all college basketball strategy at the end of games. So is this a function of the sport, the age of the kids, the coaches, like, or is this? Do you think it's worse at Auburn? I know you haven't watched as many games.
No, I don't think it's worse at Auburn necessarily, but we had some really good players, and just was frustrating that we couldn't seem to get a decent shot. And you see them get decent shots on different teams. It just seems like in March and these like tight games, these kids' brains just turn to mush and like have these awful situations. And you see these other defenders like get really aggressive and push them off their lines that they happen to. So I think it's like, you see it, it's different in NBA. These guys are so good on offense that you can't really like cheat up on defense or really be too aggressive because they'll just burn you. It's the opposite in college basketball. They know these kids aren't that great at offense, so you can really like blitz guys, and like you saw it happen to us several times where Wendell got the pick and then both people come off the pick straight up onto him, ruins the entire play. NBA, they get that ball to the center. They get that ball to the next guy and burn them. And so I think people know like it's part of college basketball. It's just frustrating to me that it's so clear they like just drive the ball. You see it happen. You see it happen all the time. It just doesn't happen as much as it should. It should happen every single play. It just happens like 50-50,
Well, it's, and you and I have disagreements about when to do it and how late to do it. I've just said forever, from watching him at Tennessee to watching him at Auburn, Bruce, like, you just got to live with it. Like, of all the things he's great at, and they are many, and we will build him a statue, and he has changed our lives in Auburn basketball forever. Just never been a strength. You can ask Tennessee fans that from their years watching. It's not. He is kind of one of those coaches. Don't get me wrong. He knows more about basketball than I'll forget ever, So I know there's a lot of depth and intricacy to what they're trying to do. Having said that, don't you feel like he's a little more of a culture, energy, effort, tenacity, togetherness? He's that guy. He's not the nerd at the, like a former coach of another sport at Auburn, the high school math teacher nerd drawing up plays that he knows are going to work, and he has the system that
I think he's got a certain philosophy that he'd rather not try something fancy and screw it up. He'd rather just have a ball in a kid's hands.
He trusts his guys.
Yeah, he shouldn't. We don't have a history of it working out, but.
Well, okay, that's not fair. It does. How many overtime games in a row did we win?
Oh, it was a lot, actually. You're right. I wore those overtime socks. So
I think sometimes
I don't know how many of those were games that we won at the end of the shot clock. It was we would go. My point is, we give a KD and Mississippi State game where we just like end up winning overtime.
Even this year, we had a winning record in those last possession games. Now, I think what people get confused about is it doesn't look pretty ever. Like, I just haven't ever seen us draw up a great end of game sequence.
That's what it is. I'm cool with I'm okay. You see it all the time in college basketball. They'll say it. A team will lose the game, and the announcers will be like, "But that's the play you wanted. You got to go the ball in your best player's hands, and they got an open shot." We don't get that. We rarely have the announcers be like, "That was a good play, it just didn't go in." And you could be. We've talked about it. We can be happy with that. We can be happy with sometimes it just doesn't go in. And we just couldn't even get a good shot at the beginning.
And you just want to win, and. Yeah. Bruce wins a lot of games, and we were the winningest team for 5 years. I don't think that happens if you don't win close games down the stretch. But you do just have to. It's so painful, and we really haven't had to deal with it yet on the big stage. Think about the 2019 team. We ran through the SEC tournament. 2018 we won the SEC regular season easily. This year, the game we were at was not that close at the end. The Final Four was weird because there was a foul, but we were up, and it wasn't on our offense to go score. We haven't had that moment yet on the big stage. Now, Jared was that guy for us in that Final Four run where when it got tied against Kentucky, we just said go. And when he needed to hit a shot,
the only moment I can think of that was one of those moments where like, yeah, we had the ball and we went and did it, was KT Harrell in that LSU SEC championship or SEC tournament run. We talked about that shot, and it's one of the few we have to talk about.
We did draw up a good little action for him on that play.
Yeah.
But what about Jared in the SEC tournament hitting a 3 against Florida, just logo 3 in his face to win
You knew that wasn't drawn up though.
No, but that's my point. Bruce is always a players. I believe in my players. I trust them. I'm giving the ball to people rather than I'm running this 5.
I think you can have both, I think you can have both.
Well,
clearly not so far.
I would like to agree. I just haven't seen it for 12 years now.
Yes, I don't know. We can talk that that's a thing, but I don't know if we want to do the final thoughts or not. We didn't finish off quite the thing. We finished off the SEC kind of. We had an awful game against Texas A&M that was brutal. That was another sign of the times of just like kind of falling apart down the stretch. We went out and beat a very inferior Jacksonville State, and then we got blown off the court against Miami in the second round. And it kind of like brings into this like legacy kind of thing. We talked about all this amazing stuff that happened this year, but sadly March is that much weight. It's the reason we love the Final Four team so much. That year they weren't that great really, but they won they won the tournament, and that was super fun. And then we went to the Final Four, and that was super fun. And the weight is just like maybe 50-50. Like the last month is like 50% of your legacy, and the other 50%, when it should be like 80% the regular season, 20% March or something. But it's not like that. In fact, it might even be worse. It might be like 75% March and 25% the season.
It's more. You're right. The pain of that is devastating. And the first year Bruce made it was just almost this celebration. Anthony was hurt. We knew we didn't have like our full team. We were just glad to be in. We got in for the first time in 15 years, and we lost by 30 to a mediocre Clemson team in the second round, but who cares? Like, we got in. This year the expectations were so much higher. It was really the first time we've had those since the 99 team. And I'm not as alarmed that we lost. I think there were a lot of people before that game saying, you better watch out for Miami. Miami was this weird, undervalued, like second or third best team in the ACC, which everybody was talking about how the ACC was really bad. And it didn't look great in the regular season, but you see what Carolina did, you see what Duke did, you see what Miami did. Those were some good teams. And Miami was dangerous, but it's very frustrating. I try not to think about it. It's very frustrating to me how we went out. Not that we went out. I'm not shocked that we lost or that our offense kind of let us down based on the way the season was trending. But without being too blunt, I didn't see great fight and effort late in the second half. I watched almost every single March Madness game, at least parts of it, because some people have hobbies. I watch college basketball, as John Rothstein says. And our game just didn't look like the others. I'm just going to be honest. Our guys did not have the same level of intensity at times or the level of execution as other games that I watched. And it's sad because we watched for 30-something games, this group. Even when they lost, it was close. Like, you couldn't blow this team out. It was hard to beat this team, right? It was always hard to beat Auburn. Like, if you beat them, you were going to have to do a lot of things well, and Auburn was going to have to do some things poorly. And we defended, and we grinded, and we got out and did our thing for a lot of the year. And it almost seemed like they got kind of punked a little bit by Miami's guards. And then they
felt defeated after that first run, after the second half. That's how long it took. Like, we had lost the game already, it felt like, after the first 5 minutes of the second half. They came back out, went on the big run on us, and it just never felt like we were coming back.
And our guys acted like that. And that's the problem. And I'm sure Bruce and them are going to have plenty to discuss. He said all the right things about, how great of it. We had a great season. This is an awesome team that he put together. If you want faith, we'll talk about this in a minute. Like, who's the best guy at putting teams together and recruiting and seeing talent develop? Auburn's the place to be right now. Having said that, it really stinks that we lost no game by more than 5 points, and we were lucky to not lose by 40. I mean, that Miami game was so bad on both ends. It was a bad matchup, maybe. I personally, I didn't think the effort and energy that Bruce always talks about was there. And for that moment, that's really, it's hard for me to deal with. I don't know if the players feel that way, but it just really didn't feel like it didn't put, you talk about narratives. I know I'm rambling. You talk about narratives all the time. I think that was the worst kind of game we could have played on that stage as a 2 seed and lose. It's one thing if you lose. It's another thing to lose like that.
Yeah. The one of those annoying parts of that to me was that we were a trendy pick to get upset early because of our guard play and because of our 3-point issues. And then we go out and Jabari and Kessler have the worst games of their career at Auburn. And just like, so these people that picked us as a trendy pick to go out early feel vindicated that they see that, and they'll tell you, oh, see, Jabari and Kessler weren't as good as people thought they were, kind of thing like that. It's like, no, you don't even know why we were a trendy pick to not do this. This was just flabbergasting. And I think the big national media guys that pay attention to a lot of year realize that it was just no one, like, what happened. Like, they were just as like blown away that happened to us as we were. But like, there's that other like more casual bracket filler outer that was just like a little smug about it. It was just super annoying. We talk about legacy and stuff for this team. It could have been worse if other SEC teams had gone further. We wanted to do this later on because we wanted to see how everybody else did and to see like how it affects what we did. If Miami went and won the national championship, it would have been a different narrative. We would have gotten like the Cinderella team had gotten us. Well, they did win their next game, so at least there was that. But that side of the bracket, man, was set up perfect for us, and we just screwed it up. And they had something special, and then luckily Kentucky lost to St. Peter's, which is huge that they went down so early. They were way more embarrassing than us.
Tennessee
goes down early, thank God. So they can't, like, they had got nothing out of the season. Absolutely nothing. Kentucky,
they won the SEC tournament.
Oh, there, okay. Kentucky's the one that got 0 rings, 0 anything. Tennessee got the SEC tournament thing, but that was it. They didn't go very far. Arkansas was the SEC darling of it all. In fact, the SEC just kind of got embarrassed, honestly. And the ACC got this vindication, and I don't think it's actually very astute. I think the SEC was actually really tough this year, just didn't work out in the tournament, which is like another, like, if you're going to say that, if I'm going to say that, I'll have to say that with the Big Ten stuff too. Maybe the Big Ten's good. It just didn't work out for them in the past, as much as I wanted to like bust the Big Ten for being over.
Big Ten is good.
Yeah, but they've had these issues in the tournament for a couple of years now. And Arkansas is the one that ended up going to Elite Eight again. Thank God they didn't go Final Four. They are building on it big time. It's partially our fault when we aren't doing it with them, but I think you're always going to have another team like that. Like it's tough, like Kentucky's always going to be Kentucky unless like they just absolutely fall apart in the next decade or something. Kentucky will always be Kentucky, and you're always going to be watching at this point with how much the SEC is paying, how much everyone's invested in now. There's always going to be at least one other team like that. Right now there's 2, really. It feels like we're competing against Tennessee and Arkansas as the other ones this year, and that Alabama hopefully is falling off a little bit. LSU's done, which thank God. So, and hopefully Florida doesn't turn anything around down there, because that could be a juggernaut that's waiting or whatever. So they went Elite Eight again. I mean, you can only dream so much. Like, we got everybody else that went out. LSU went out.
We got everything we could want.
Everything we want. Yeah.
And look, I mean, it's not realistic in this league with these coaches that are in this league. Like, you're right. Somebody's always going to be winning stuff. Now, I think
Alabama went out in the first round. We forgot to mention that. That was, thank God, because they could have turned it around too. All they had to do was win a game or two, and their whole narrative on the season's different.
Their last 2 games were losing to Vanderbilt in their first SEC tournament game, which we lost A&M. So I mean, we can't. But at least we did go further than them. They had 15 losses this year. I mean, they were really weird year outside of those big wins they got. Yeah. Arkansas is the team. Back-to-back Elite Eights is no joke. We talked about how important
it is. And the recruiting is just off the wall. So
they're good. They're going to be really good. And they probably, I think people know something about Kentucky. If you look ahead, like, I think people think Sheboy is going to come back. And Kentucky and Arkansas seem to be the 2 picks to win the league next year.
Yeah. It'll be rare that we ever get picked to win.
We're never going to get picked to win the league, but we've shown that we can be in that race. And I think we'll still have a chance next year.
Even with Bruce, it'll be tough to ever outwork. Like we saw this year, maybe what it could be, a team that's just as talented as Kentucky. But man, now with Arkansas recruiting and stuff, it's going to be tough to ever be the preseason darlings. We're never going to get that national media. Like Kentucky's just got 10,000 more reporters to cover them. They've got that many more people voting on their side. There's
as long as we're winning
so it'll always
championships.
be a bit of a uphill climb for Bruce to like pull that off, and then no one's ever going to admit that they were wrong when we were picked 4th or 5th in the league or whatever.
You need to let that go, because that is perfect. It's the perfect fit for Bruce and how he coaches, and you talked about him not being one of the chosen ones at the table. He knows it. He has a huge chip on both of his shoulders, and he carries that in the way he coaches. Auburn's the perfect place for him. He's always going to have ammo to throw at his guys. Like, dude, y'all won the SEC last year. Nobody believes in y'all. They think it was just Jabari and Walker. And he's going to have stuff every year, because you're right. We're never going to get to that point. I don't care how well we do or how well we recruit. We don't have the hype engine of
we don't
those
have the media cachet. We don't have we had a thing I talked about on the podcast that this dude, one of the big CBS guys, was like, it just admits it on a podcast the other day. And I think it's like most neutral people won't even care. But he was like, all right, well, I'm going to be in Greensville for the Duke stuff and different things going on there, even though we're the ones, the 2 seed in that field or whatever. And like, he didn't even barely mention us. And he's like, and if Duke wins, I'll be in San Francisco. And if Duke loses, I'll be somewhere else or whatever. It's just like, so you're just following freaking Duke around. Like, you don't even care if like the other team in that bracket beats Duke. That team's not better than them. Like, you can't, come on, the bias of just like following around these blue bloods. It's just how it is. We're just,
somehow I don't think Bruce Pearl's going to get the same retirement party for a year. Not that I'm not saying he's Coach K, but like, it's just different.
Yeah. Well, that's some of the stuff on that. I don't know if you have any other kind of like, it's all legacy stuff. And the reason we talked about those other SEC teams and stuff is just, it matters. It matters because we're jockeying for this like kind of like big picture stuff, and this team did lock in a lot of things. But so our other teams,
it could have been so much better. It could have been so much better. I think that's the part we have to deal with as fans. We saw the potential. We saw the number one, team in the country. They legitimately had earned that this year, which is huge. Really glad we were ahead of this. Like, you got to appreciate when you win the regular season. This scenario is exactly why. You don't know what exactly is going to happen in tournament play. It's one and done, both in the SEC and NCAA. So it's frustrating there, but ultimately when you take a step back, like you said, Arkansas has back-to-back Elite Eights, which is a really great accomplishment. Again, for Auburn, I think the goal is how many Sweet 16s can we make? The Final Four we're always going to have, and I love that we're the last SEC team to go to the Final Four. I hope that keeps up for as long until we go back one day maybe. But like, we need to start getting second weekends, and that I think will be Bruce's big thing moving forward. He did it at Tennessee. He got there a few times. He got, the COVID year messed everything up. Yeah. And then last year was weird. The 18 team was down a bunch of starters. So like,
in my opinion, we had 2 COVID years. People like, I just think that year was so strange when no fans and our team got screwed and
with the NCAA. So I just think for us as a program, the next goal is, can you have your team in the hunt, which the underrated thing about Auburn, every time they've made the tournament, it's been 5 seed or better. So we're not like sneaking in. Like, we're in that top group that if you're a top 4 or 5 seed, like on that 4 or 5 line or higher, you have a very legitimate chance to go to the Sweet 16 anytime you're in that. So we just need to keep stacking seasons like that. It's a huge thing for this program that we had the most wins in the last 5 years in the SEC, counting our bad year, counting the COVID year that got cut short. I'm really thrilled with where we're at as a program. This year was a good stepping stone to like re-entering ourselves in the chat of the SEC hierarchy, because you're right, it's just going to be really competitive. But how cool is it that Auburn's in it and Vanderbilt's not? Florida's not. Georgia's not. LSU now probably won't be for a little while. It's just we're in it, and I think that's really a testament to how great of a job Bruce has done.
Yep. I want to have a little bit of a cathartic experience here. It's going to be a long podcast, guys, but I think we need this to really feel like some closure on this year. I don't have it on the list here, but I think it's time to do. I want to turn off, and we can market the podcast. I'm sorry, people that have kids and things. There's going to be a lot of F words in this next one. Not the F word, but the F word, like our F word.
The
so
sport.
Turn it off. So here it is. If you don't want your kids to hear about football, it's time to turn it off. Because this is what I want to do. I want to do this real quick because I think it'll be an interesting and cathartic discussion. This Miami game was one of the biggest losses, in my opinion, in Auburn sports history. Like at least the most like brutal, the most disappointing, the most like so much was on the line kind of thing. That I think it'd be interesting to talk quickly about. You have to add football in because there's like in basketball, this is a unique standalone disappointment. We talked about peacocking all this year. Like there's not been this game in pretty much since maybe 99 that felt like we had this much on the line to even lose, to even have that much sadness. So we were blown away. What else do you compare this to, Matt? What's some other football included?
So I don't think it's as bad as you do. And I'm pretty harsh, like you heard. Like I'm very frustrated with our effort in that game. I don't care that we lost.
I'm just talking about how much was on the line. Like people were just blown away, like just like sunken eyed, like how did that happen?
Well, if you wonder how it happened, you're not watching the right tournament. I mean, it's not that shocking to lose to a team that you're favored to beat. I mean, that's what the whole thing is built around. I don't think it's necessarily like a program jarring loss. Like you were throwing out 2014 Texas A&M, which is one of the hardest, brutal losses of my life as an Auburn football fan. I do like football. Yeah, Jackson doesn't like football.
What is some other thing compared to some stuff that people compare? I think the 2014 Texas A&M is a big one. Just a game you should have won against a team that was not that great and completely ruined like that team. People forget how 2014 football team was. Like everybody's just, we're going back next year. We'll be back for sure. And it was heading that way, honestly. I think we had one loss before that. And it was heading that way, and just out of nowhere, no one thought that was going to be the game that we lost. And we butt fumbled, and we fumbled on the goal line. And it just was like, people were just blown away. Like what happened? That's the kind of thing I'm trying to like get to, is like what happened? We had everything. And in a moment, it was gone, So
this would be on the level of like, you have to have a good team, right? Because this was a really good team. You have to have
the hype. You have to believe that you were headed to something special, and then an inferior team beat us, which is not a lot of things that happen in Auburn sports, honestly.
Charles's team, one of his best teams while he was at Auburn, lost to Richmond in the first round. That was pretty shocking.
Yeah, sorry, older Auburn fans, or a lot of people on message boards like to call olds. You're probably shouting at this podcast like, "Oh, these older things." Basically, my mind, like I don't remember a lot before like 2000.
There's two losses in basketball. There's that one. There's the 1999 team that lost in the Sweet 16 as a 1 seed to
Syracuse, right?
That was 03. We actually had a good run in 03. We weren't that good. We snuck in and made some noise. 99, number 1 seed. Made it to the Sweet 16, I think pretty barely, and then lost pretty bad to like a 4 seed, maybe Ohio State or somebody like that. Yeah. That was pretty bad.
Anytime that's the only team that's ever had this kind of expectations is the 99 team.
Right? Correct. So in basketball history, like that's it.
At least they made the Sweet 16, so that was like the thing, like you said, trying to make Sweet 16. So it sucks, but this one's even worse,
Yeah. I mean, football, goodness, it's hard to even compare them though, because they're so.
I would put the Texas A&M game. I would put, if you want to go milder, you could put the 2013 national championship, because it did have everything on the line. But that's going to the national championship. Right. It's not like that bad. But there's this like whole thing that people in a lot of sports do, and they're like, "Oh, but we'll be back next year. We've built a great program back." Just so many things have to align, and like you've seen, we have not been even close really since 2013. So like it looks back. Further back, you're like, damn, 13 seconds away, Maybe that Arkansas game in 2006 when we lost to
we had 2 that year actually, so that might be the best.
Some of those Georgia games in Athens.
That might be the best comparison. Would be that 06 team that lost twice when they were in the top 3 or 4 in the same season. They were like amazing, then they wet the bed against Arkansas and Gus Malzahn. And then they got back to like number 3 or 4 or 5 or something against Georgia team that wasn't good at all. And then they lost by like 22 at home to Georgia. So they really like blew it twice when they were in the national hunt.
Maybe that Georgia game, the SEC championship was bad.
Yeah, I was thinking the end of 7.
It's tough. It's tough because these are all good teams. Like you go to an SEC championship game, that's another good.
But that's
team.
the
Like
criteria.
losing,
The 17 season, the way it ended, probably is a good comparison because we saw that team on the field. Like they lost some games, right? They lost to UConn early in the year.
We knew that team was exhausted from the 2 games before and lost.
But we saw that they could beat anybody, right? They beat by double digits, 2 number 1 teams.
This basketball team was like so great. It was better than everybody else the entire year. So it's kind of tough because that team went the other way where like at the end they put it together,
And then they collapsed and then they lost to UCF. I like the 17 comparison because you lost to Georgia and then you lost to UCF, which made it worse.
You're right.
And this one, people are going to forget about the A&M game now. That A&M game was bad. To end the SEC tournament on the first day you played in it. That was a bad loss too. So
maybe an 03 Georgia Tech game. Was that year?
That was at the beginning of the
05, yeah.
At the beginning of the year, but it's hard to make the comparison. I don't think it's nearly as bad. Maybe this is just because in basketball, even a second round exit, it's like, hey, that's like
for us, yeah. I'm just trying to put the disappointment in because I think it really sucks for Auburn fans that I think a lot of Auburn football fans have turned to basketball as they're like, see, we don't screw up in basketball like we do in football. Even if we lose, it's not like screwing up or being like this. That's the reason we talk about peacocking, because we've gotten to become such a pessimist in football. You know me, y'all don't even want to know my football opinions. I'm just like so done with it that I'm upset with the whole concept at this point. But I'm like at not systematic existential crisis mode in football. I'm like, it might just dissolve as a concept in a couple of years. But so we turned to basketball. A lot of people did, at least a lot of casuals turned to basketball as like this, like, see, we don't screw up here. We can peacock. We can like feel good that like even if we lose, we're a good team. And then this happens, and you wonder how many fans were like, this wasn't supposed to happen. I finally turned to this. You told me I should watch this and be into this. And it disappoints me just like it does in football. Like, I hope that's not where we end up with, but I think there will be a lot of pessimist fans that are like, see, all my sports disappoint me,
But guess what? Losing sucks. And it sucks in every sport. And again, I just think you picked the wrong sport. First of all, if you think it's that big of a deal when you lose a tournament game, ask all these teams. Duke made the Final Four for the first time in 10 years this year. These massive programs. Kentucky loses to St. Peter's. It just happens. You hate when it happens to you. Ironically, Auburn's like the only school that hasn't lost in the first round in since the field.
Well, if you don't make them, you can't lose.
But we're 11-0 in the first round. I guarantee you.
That was a crazy stat. That was a crazy stat. If we didn't throw that out in one of the other things, there was like a stat floating around that we were like we had the best record in the first round of like any team with a certain amount of games. Yeah.
We're like the only P5 school that hasn't lost in the first round since the field expanded. And granted, you're right. We haven't been in it every year. I think
part of the pressure and part of why this hurts so much is because we don't have a lot of golden teams. We don't produce that many golden teams. Like when Duke or North Carolina or Kansas, who are these Bluebirds, they create a golden team almost every year, at least every other year. And then when they get upset in the second round during that, they're like, well, all right, we'll have another golden team. Maybe next year's not that team, but every 3 or 4 years, they seem to have a team where they're like, this team could be special. And so then when our team,
but aren't we doing that right now? Like, didn't we just have
but you're just always a little worried that anything, another shoe.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. You got to make the most of it when you have these players in this team. Like we had, I hate it. I hate that we didn't take advantage more like we could.
The same thing you talk about the 13 next year. Like people always think that they're trending this way and it's gonna
But don't you? I don't think you're guaranteed anything. But I feel like we're exactly in the right position to have a special team every few years with Bruce, and where we're like, I think we're in a good. Now you're right. It could all fall apart.
You're just extending it. You're just extending it by another year or two when we're so ready to like.
But why was it? So here's the question. I know your answer to this, but was this a good season?
Yeah, it was a great season. It was a great season, but we watched it slightly different than a lot of people did.
Does it count as a golden era team in your mind?
I think that's where we're going to have to talk about. Like, I mean, I don't know if we'll have to go, like, history becomes more clear the further away you get from it or whatever. Like you said, if this trends correctly, if like we keep stacking these teams and we go win a national championship in a year or two or whatever, you can almost, it changes everything. You know, you fall apart after this year, Bruce gets sick or something or whatever. And then you're like, man, that was our one chance ever to go to the national championship. And we didn't do it, you know, like.
But I refuse to not like.
I'm just afraid this team, this is what I'm getting to a little bit, I guess. I'm afraid this team, for a large amount of this fan base, will be a team they look back on in 10 years and they go, man, the talent on that team was one of the most talented team we ever had. And we just crapped the bed in the tournament. And that team could have been so special. And they won SEC. You know, you win a couple more SEC championships and like, then all of a sudden this one winning an SEC championship becomes, yeah, man, it's one of those SEC championship teams. And they actually, believe it or not, might have been the most talented team we've had in all these years. They just had a bad game, you know, and like, I just don't want that to be the legacy. I want this team to be like, what, like this golden team, you know?
Well, it will be part of their legacy. I mean, I think that's the unfortunate part of March is you can't, especially the way they went out, you can't hide from that. That's going to go with you. But do you not, I mean, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but do you not think that we can have just as talented of a team at some point in the future?
Yeah, we could. I'm just not betting on anything like that or holding my breath or anything. But like the point is kind of like just the way people talk about things. Words matter. The way people think about things matter. The Final Four run team. You should honestly think of the Final Four run team as like, man, the Final Four got so hot in the tournament. It's so fun to watch. It gone down the stretch, but man, they weren't that great during the season. They just kind of got hot late. But that's not how they talk about it. They talk about it as, man, that Final Four team was so great. Bryce, Jared, Chuma, and they went to the Final Four. It's so cool. There's no but. I'm afraid this team will be, what a great team. Jabari, Walker, oh my God, so amazing. But down the stretch, they fell apart. You know?
It will be. And but that's how the sport is. That's where the 70% march comes in the way it gets talked about. I think that's why we as fans need to be really mindful of like we've talked about on this podcast all year, celebrating those wins and celebrating they matter to us. Kentucky may not care. You know, I have friends who are Kentucky, we don't care if we didn't win anything this year. It's like, all right, well, great. I do. I care about winning stuff because most of my life, Auburn basketball didn't win stuff. So I'm going to celebrate every time they win a conference tournament, every time they win a regular season, every time they go to the Sweet 16, every time they get in. I'm going to be excited to see them pop up on the freaking TV show every year when they make it. Like, It's just, you have to have that, I think, mentality. And I honestly think it makes it more exciting and joyful. And I do think for Auburn fans who are really along for the ride this year, there's always going to be that what if, that frustration about the tournament. I don't think you can get around that. But I think these guys and the way people felt like connected to them in a way, they seemed like just genuinely good people. And I think people connect. I think the enjoyment of watching them this year after COVID and everything that's happened, I'd like to think that at least within the Auburn fan base, there's still going to be a really special, it's the repeat, it's the second conference championship. It wasn't a fluke the first time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think you bring a good point about the connection with the players. I think we grew a generation of fans in the students that not only, you're right, not only was this a cool experience, if no matter what happened, there's a big group of students that had crappy 2 years of COVID on campus. They didn't do half the fun stuff we got to do. They didn't go to the football games for a full year there or whatever. This was their moment. Their college moment was not an Iron Bowl or whatever. Like, sure, that overtime Iron Bowl was cool or whatever, but like the moment they're going to talk about is like when the campus exploded and they like have this special, like when they moved to New York or when they moved to California, wherever, and they want to get involved with the alumni club or they want to get involved and watch with their friends. The reason they're going to want to do that is because they had this magical moment that they still get goosebumps from when they spent the night in Pearlville or like celebrated at Sky Bar after or whatever. Like that's the moments we hold. You know, I don't remember the classes and different stuff. I remember the moments with my friends, like the epic moments where we felt like we were on top of the world. And so there's going to be a generation of those students that for them, Auburn was basketball, so I think that's really where
They never lost at home this year. Nobody who attended an Auburn basketball game this year witnessed a loss. And that happens around the country because home court is so important, but we've never been on that list of places where it happens. And you're right. I think there's something there with this team. Now I'm struggling with it personally because I was just ticked off at how they played and how we kind of cowered to a Miami team that, by the way, you mentioned it. They made the Elite Eight, and they played. They were ahead of Kansas at halftime or right behind them. Like Kansas won it all.
Kansas just turned that thing up like we thought we might, right?
They did.
Maybe it was kind of doing to what happened to us, and Kansas got it close to the, and then Kansas came out and roared, and we did the opposite.
I think it's okay. I think it's okay to acknowledge that Miami had a good thing going. They were old. You talked about the experience factor with the COVID teams when they had such young players. Like Miami had a bunch of 22, 23-year-old guards who had just been there, and ultimately and they just shot better. We've seen all year, like this team just doesn't shoot well on a day-to-day basis, especially away from home sometimes. So.
This is a good transition to, all right, guys, if you have kids or whatever, if you were trying to pause it, we're done saying the word football. It is back to being bleeped in the F word. And this is a good transition to who we've lost, who we're gaining, kind of how to build a team going forward. So want to walk us through who we've lost so far?
Yeah, so we have the official announcements so far that Walker Kessler and Jabari Smith will be going to the NBA. Really excited to see where they end up. And Jackson and I were talking about, it's going to be, we have so many Auburn guys in the league now. With Okoro's really stuck with Cleveland. Jared and Bryce kind of have the two-way thing. Jared was up with the Pelicans recently, got to play some. Chuma's really blossoming.
He's coming together. Yeah, he's kind of like in college. He's starting in his sophomore, junior year, whatever, in the NBA. He's starting to really become a guy.
So, really excited for them. I really, personally, I just loved watching the way Jabari and Walker played. I think they were extremely coachable. I think they're going to do great in the NBA. Really excited for them. Devin Cambridge.
I think we officially will have enough players. So I was telling Matt earlier this week, we will officially with Jabari and hopefully Walker too. I know Walker's status is going to be a little more wonky just because of how the NBA is these days. You can be that great of a player in college and just not quite fit in the NBA. But now for sure with Isaac, Chuma, and Jabari, it'll be enough Auburn players to where I could start really kind of paying attention as a casual NBA fan outside of the playoffs and stuff. And I like the NBA, but I don't listen to an NBA podcast weekly or anything like that, but I will starting, I'll be looking at the stats every once in a while. If I hear Jabari had a big game or Isaac or Chuma or something, I'll be tuning into the podcast to hear what people say about it.
We do need to just acknowledge that there is a very the odds on, if you bet on who's going to be number one pick, the number the highest, the favorite to be number one is Jabari Smith.
Really? That's great. Yeah. I was watching, I was afraid that Banchero, because he got that Final Four run and actually his shooting was picking up a little bit, that he might be there because he actually fits a little more with this idea, this Anthony Edwards idea of a uber athletic guy that will figure out his shooting. But luckily Ben Simmons has ruined that a little bit for these uber athletic guys because he never did figure out his shooting. And so,
well,
Chet got ruined because of the Christian Porzingis guy and a couple of these other unicorn guys.
Well,
Chet's super tall.
Chet's still in that. It's Chet. It's those three.
Yeah, it's in those three, but I think it helps that the kind of guy Jabari has not failed yet in the NBA. This Kevin Durant style guy hasn't failed yet because Porzingis failed to an extent. Ben Simmons failed to an extent. And that's kind of the guys that kind of look like those other two. I'm hoping someone says, let's do the Jabari thing and hope that he puts a little more muscle on and develops a little more of a dribble because his shooting is just insane. And that's where they are in the NBA right now, right?
Yep.
Imagine Steph Curry, but 6'10",
The worry with Jabari is, are you taking him at number one if you think he's just a shooter? And
you think what?
The worry with Jabari would be, if you're taking him at number one, is it too high to just take a really good shooter?
If he needs to make his own plays or not.
And are you missing a unicorn opportunity, whatever Chet could be? Could he be a weird version of a Giannis who people didn't know what to do with and has turned out to be incredible? And then
Banchero turn up that three and all of a sudden he becomes such an athletic freak, LeBron style kind of guy.
But regardless, I do listen to NBA stuff kind of during the year just so I know what's going on, so that when college basketball ends and when the playoffs start, I can kind of know what's going on. Jabari's been the topic all over it. It's great marketing for us. And 2 more guys for Bruce. He brought in, Jabari was like the number 6 prospect in his class. He's going out potentially number 1. Walker was a 5-star, but nobody thought he was going to be a first-round pick after this year. So he continues to have this trend of like accelerating guys' growth to the league. And in Walker's case, Walker was, everybody has said who's close to that situation, like he was really torn because he loved playing at Auburn. Bruce, and I think his family, when you're a first-round pick, it's just, you kind of have to go.
I don't know what the projections are now. Have you seen it? They're kind of all over the place for Walker, right?
They're somewhere between late lottery and like 23 to Milwaukee's been really common to play beside Giannis. It's been kind of cool.
You just hope that it's not a Sharif situation where it's all over the place and then it ends up being really bad, So.
But I mean, ultimately, it's really good for our recruiting. I'll say that, to have got these guys repeatedly coming in. Like Okoro wasn't supposed to be a one and done first round pick, and he went top 5. Like Bruce keeps accelerating these guys to the money, to the draft. That's where you have to be if you're recruiting these elite athletes. And so they're both gone. Devin Cambridge is the only announced transfer at this point. He and his brother are going to Arizona State.
Good for them, because I thought for sure, I was joking around that MTSU is about to get some good players. He's from Nashville originally. I really thought, and he was doing this combo thing with his brother who played in Nevada. And I thought for sure that combo of having to do a combo thing, and the fact Cambridge clearly is not SEC guy, just didn't work out in the SEC necessarily, but he's uber athletic. So I thought, go to a G5 type team, mid-major, and you'll play really well and you'll look really good against one of those teams or whatever. You got Arizona State offers. I have no idea what's going on at Arizona State, or if that's a good basketball program or not. Good for them. They stayed P5. Hope they have fun out on the West Coast. I heard Arizona State's a fun place to be, so cool. Good for them. That's the kind of guy that the transfer rule should be for and should work out for. A guy that needs to reset somewhere else, that is not going to get playing time in his current team, and no matter how hard he works, really.
I hope Devin blossoms. Like, I hope he kind of gets a bigger opportunity, and I hope he does really well. I mean, and at this point, it's crazy how this has changed, but we kind of have to respect him. He had a lot of loyalty for 3 years he stuck around with this, this group. And I think he knew this year it was probably going to be iffy playing time. Flanagan's injury probably actually gave him more than he would have.
Yeah, I don't know if he knew that. I think he still thought he could turn into something, and he just never did. He never turned into the 3-point guy. He never turned into a dribble drive guy. He just, I don't know. He's got to specialize in something, I guess. He's just got to get one of those going, and he can't get either. So he turned into this alley-oop guy and this dunk guy. And Matt said 1,000 times, when he leaves, there's going to be an amazing highlight video. No one's produced it yet, but I guarantee somebody will put that together, because he is going to have some of the best dunks in Auburn history.
If you do that, if you are listening in this podcast, I will. I'll buy you dinner.
Greenlight Media, I believe, follows us and makes cool highlights. Make a Devin Cambridge mixtape. That thing is going to go viral.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to see them all. I want to see all the dunks from his 3 years. I know it's a lot. It'll be like a 15-minute, 20-minute video, but
at least all the really good ones. Yeah, but then again, all his dunks are the good ones. He doesn't really have casual dunks.
I mean, you can leave out some of the really but most of his are pretty good.
Yeah, he slams it down when he slams. He lives above the rim, as they say.
So, who would be the candidates for you that I would say
It's surprising to me that more people haven't announced yet. Honestly, Devin announced pretty quickly, but we were fine with that. I think we had a good. I think he would have been one of the top couple guys we knew were going to leave. Maybe not the top guys, honestly, because the top guys we thought were going to leave, Ali or Berman, Chris Moore, a Stretch. We thought, if you had to put them in order of we thought the day the season ends, we thought Stretch would be gone. Then we thought Chris Moore, Cambridge, or kind of one of those two is definitely gone, probably both. And that's great. And then Leor is another strange one, because he's clearly a guy that could do pretty well in probably the G5. He thrived in out of conference against these smaller teams. Maybe he's the kind of guy that is cool with that. He wants to stay at Auburn and just play those out of conference minutes, and
maybe he likes
part of a good team.
He likes playing for his Jewish head coach.
Yeah, maybe he's got a plan to be a coach one day or something like that. I mean, the transfer portal is made for a guy like Leor that is clearly good enough to play in these G5s and could have been doing that, and can go move and do something like that and get some playing time.
All depends what you want.
He's not gone yet. I think he's a walk-on originally, right? We gave him a scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully, like, it's brutal. We're going to get into like how to build a team, but I think it's kind of guys you're like, okay, well, that was nice to have a scholarship this year, but if we get somebody else, it's going to be somebody
So
else.
let's give a quick overview. So the new guys coming in that we know of. Okay, we get Trey Donaldson, who's a dual sport athlete, plays another sport that we will not be talking about right now. Safety in that sport, plays point guard. He will be coming in. Most people think he's going to land as a basketball player more than football long-term potential. Chance Westry is and Trey Donaldson's a 4-star from Tallahassee. Really good athlete. I think he was named Florida. There's
a chance if he plays the other sport that his scholarship goes to that sport. But I think it's trending pretty hard these days that he's not going to play that other sport and he's just going to play basketball because he has higher potential in basketball.
And we'll see. There's a lot to talk about. So we'll talk about that point guard here in a minute. Chance Westry is a top 50 recruit, really good, kind of snuck under the radar as a wing. He'll play the 2-3 for us. Really super athletic, going to be a great defender. I think there's some debate about how quickly his offense will translate, but he's coming in. And then the big one with LSU's demolition derby of their roster, getting the 5-star commitment of LSU's Johan
Trejo,
the
Frenchie.
From
Viva
France.
Viva la France, Viva la Trejo.
And this is fascinating because now that Kessler's gone, I mean, he can play center, but I think most people view him as a really big, versatile power forward. So those 3 are coming in that we know of.
You want to share the screen on those?
Yeah. We also know that, make sure I get this right. Okay. We also know that, where's that going with that? Here's our graph. You can see, if you're watching, you can see kind of our very rough draft of our breakdown here.
You can go from there to kind of see what each position, what we need. We know for sure. Like, we know for sure we need another center. We know. Go ahead.
Well, okay, hang on. So here's what I want to do. I want to go through each position and just kind of give where, as of April 10th, when we're recording this is what we think. So Zep Jasper has said multiple times he is coming back. He's using that COVID year. He will be back this season, or this coming season.
Love it.
Wendell Green will be back unless somebody on this podcast wants to kick him off the team. And then Trey Donaldson would be the third guy at point guard. I want to come in firing. Like, point guard, I don't think we're bringing anybody else in.
I want to go the other way. Because I think it's easier to start the other way. And I think we have a lot more to discuss as we go. I think the first 2 are super easy. The 5 position, Cardwell and Stretch. Stretch, I'm sorry, you got to go. I think I've heard Bruce talk about this in the past, that in this new day and age, it's tough. It's really tough. You want to keep with these kids and develop them and be their mentor and all this stuff. And it's just not how it is these days. You got to be brutal, honestly. It's sad almost. Well, and that's like the choice. That's the choice between these kids get this freedom to transfer anywhere they want, but you're going to have to deal with the fact it's going to be the other way around. We're going to have to kick people off, and it sucks.
You don't. No, you don't, because we are talking to multiple transfers at this position. So you're right. I think we are going to look around.
I think you do have to not kick off, but like,
no, you don't.
Bruce says you have to be, that he's just honest with these kids at the end of the season and tells them what he thinks they will be doing on the team the next year. And I think that's the meeting that Bruce has with Stretch and goes, Stretch, man, you've been great. I think you didn't get to play this year. And I just, we're going to take another center, and you might be in the same situation. We'd love to have you around on the practice squad, and maybe you'll get some more minutes this year. But I'll also put you in touch with a lot of great coaches in the G5.
Well, that's fine.
Minutes,
that's not kicking him off. That's giving him a choice.
That's what I'm saying. I think you tell him, like, you can sit on the bench if you want to.
Well, we are going to bring in another big. Like, you don't have to worry about that. That's happening. But I personally like having 3 centers. I don't know if you've forgotten.
I think we do. Sure, keep Stretch around. I just think you go for another guy. I think Stretch he didn't even play at all this year, and there was moments he could have played, and they just didn't even.
There's nothing to discuss then, because we're doing that. We're talking to Johnny Broom from.
Sure.
We're going to add another.
I rather take 2 new. If you were adamant we need 3 centers, I'd rather take 2 new ones and not.
That's not going to happen.
I think you got to be brutal in this day and age. If everybody's going to leave whenever they want, you got to be just as brutal on the other side if you want to truly build a national championship team. And so I would tell Stretch, I'll put you in contact with some other great G5 coaches that can develop you. But I think it's easy to say that we need another center. We know that for sure. We're going to go after some other centers.
If we can get a good one, if we can get somebody good, which I think
do not want to go into next season with Cardwell and Stretch. That's it. That would not be good.
I think we're going to get one. And I think the conversation can go like you were saying, like, hey, we are going to bring somebody in, Stretch. Yeah, I get it. You were a great teammate for the last couple of years. Like, if you want to go somewhere else, that's fine. I get it. I'll help you out. If you want to stay, we'd love to have 3 centers.
You know what I do? I go after 2. I go after the broom guy. I mean, I go after a transfer, and I go after a freshman.
You're not going to get 2 guys from the portal that want to play.
Well, I think you could get potentially the Julian Phillips guy that was at LSU, was a 5-star LSU center guy, or you could get a transfer guy, or you could try to get both and be like,
why would they both come here?
I mean, Cardwell, I'm sorry, you're not getting as many minutes. Like,
why would they both come in here to share time?
I don't know.
That doesn't make sense. That's not going to happen.
You play 3 centers or 2 centers.
So you're telling me the Julian Phillips, sure, if we can get Julian Phillips.
All right, you get one or the other then. Get one or the other, and Akebola can sit on the bench.
I'm just saying the thought process, why would a 5th-year transfer from NC State come along with a 5-star when we already have
the NC State guy? I'm talking about the Morehead State guy.
Same thing, same position.
Because he wants to go to Morehead because he wants to play at Auburn. He wants to play for a national championship. He wants to get his NBA stock up.
If he wants his NBA stock up, he probably shouldn't go with a 5-star and Cardwell at the same position.
I don't know. Maybe, hey, if we get Julian, then sure. I get why they don't want it. Like, you got to have I don't want the third guy to be Akebola is what I'm saying. You could go get another transfer that's younger. Go get a 4-star center.
Good luck. Good luck finding somebody to come in and want to sit behind those guys.
I guess. All I know is we know for sure we're going to need one more center. And hopefully that's either that broom guy at Morehead State, if we get really lucky, because he was like number 3 on the list in most blocks and is a really, really good. And there's another guy, like you said, the NC State guy is another guy.
The other nice piece of this is if we need Johan or Jalen to play center, we know we can. So it's possible that I think we have a lot of positional flexibility, which I really like. If the best fit for a transfer ends up being a power forward, then we have some options there. I'm not saying Jalen or Johan would maybe necessarily.
I guess we need to play with, like, I can only feel good and confident about doing 2 deep stuff. Like you said, once you start getting to the third, like Stretch versus somebody else, like, it does get really tough because I don't really know what our options are for the 3 in a lot of these things. Maybe taking a freshman, like the fact that we're taking, if you think Jasper and Green are going to be on the team next year and you take Donaldson's cool with it. Because he's like, I'll get some minutes in my freshman year, like, so maybe you do the same.
And he might be playing another sport and not joining the team until Christmas.
Yeah. But I know for sure we need one more center, and we're hoping it's maybe that broom guy. If you hear, like, I hopefully puts in perspective. Hopefully, if you're still listening to the podcast at this point, you're probably pretty diehard and already know this stuff. But the broom guy, I think I can't remember what his first name is, but if we get him, Johnny Broom, if we get him, that's a big deal. Like, I want to put in perspective somewhat in this recruiting world, like what's a big deal and what's not. If we get him, it's a big deal. Just like when we got Trejo, was a big deal. So that takes us to the 4 position. This will be an interesting one. Jalen Williams and Johan Trejo, which I hope we pronounced that right. Might be embarrassed in a couple months when we actually figure out what the real pronunciation stuff is. But
I'm going with you seem very confident, so I went with it.
I feel like I've heard that name much times now. But this was a really interesting one. Johan was split with us and LSU, or we were one of the top of his list. He's from France originally, and he ended up going LSU, which pre-NIL days and different stuff. If you go to Will Wade's team, I'm thinking we never had a chance with you because you clearly have something else on your mind other than being developed to different stuff. You're going for the money, honestly, and down to like jump into this like corruption ship, which makes me a little like, okay, Johan, why did you do that? But like with the, death penalty type style LSU has gotten, they've lost all their guys. They've lost everybody that was on the team and they've lost all their commitments. So luckily this kind of shows like when there's this many teams at SEC that are good and recruiting against us, that like we could be more talented. It's tough. We got a lot of teams to recruit against. And when LSU falls apart, all of a sudden we got a 5-star power forward that we weren't going to get before. And maybe like in the future, if they stay down, we get some more 5-star guys that would have gone to LSU in the past, So he's a big deal. And there's another guy from LSU, Julian Phillips, who's a center 5-star that they had coming. I don't know how they got. Actually, I do know. There's a little bit of this, a little bit of money. That's how they got 5 stars to come to LSU, even though their program was on the precipice of getting this death penalty for like 2 or 3 years. But so there's another 5-star guy that Trejo said he's trying to get to come with them. So that would be interesting. So LSU's losses are gain. The other interesting factor at the 4 position is that Bruce has been adamant that he's like, I don't know if he said for sure he's building the team around Jalen Williams, but he's like, say he's a main part. And oh man, Jalen, he like stuck around when he was behind Jabari, when he could have been a great player on the team. And Matt loves Jalen. We've talked about it. I think Jalen's a solid player in the SEC. We already got Trejo, so the pressure's off really on like finding another 4 position guy. It'll be interesting to see how those guys go back and forth. If Jalen's upset that we took a 5-star power forward, or if he thinks, I think Jalen should be happy as a former 3-star to like keep doing what he's doing. I don't think he's shown enough to be like a guy that can demand a starting role, Not a national championship caliber team, at least.
It's going to be interesting. I'm not convinced. I keep going back to positional flexibility. I'm not convinced that they're going to split time at the 4.
Yeah, that might be what Bruce is selling to Jalen, is that like, yeah, we took Trejo, but you guys are going to be both on the floor at the same time. But we'll see if that changes the narrative if we end up getting a Julian or a Broom or anybody else that all of a sudden they're like, well, I know I said y'all play it. We'll still play that sometimes,
I just think I was looking through just while you were talking, there's a Louisiana Tech had a kid, a big guy who could kind of be a 4 or 5 who just entered the portal, who we've already reached out to. We've mentioned the other 2. Brandon Huntley Hatfield, a 5-star for Tennessee, just randomly kind of today. I was shocked, went in the portal. He's kind of like a Jalen Williams prototype, so I'm not sure, but some people are putting Auburn in the top 3 for him. So I don't know if there's something to that. You're right though. And maybe Bruce is just recruiting Jalen, right? Like
yeah, he's out there saying all these nice things just to keep him around,
But I believe with every fiber of my being that he could be a championship level starter at the 4 for this team next year. I really do.
You'd have to have some solid people around him, because I don't know.
No, you don't. I think
he could be good.
That's bull. Be good. The only reason, I don't know, unless you have other thoughts on this, the only reason he didn't play more this year is because he was behind 2 first-round draft picks at the 2.
Yeah. Of course. I don't think he's like some great scorer, some guy that's going to lead your team to any kind of big time like thing. It's not like in his like 10 minutes a game he came in and I was like, wow, that guy's a future star, or that guy's like going to be a playmaker.
Did you play basketball growing up?
No, not really.
So you can ask anybody. The hardest job in the NBA in a lot of cases is being a spot guy coming off the bench.
Yeah.
Because you don't get in the rhythm of the game. You get thrown out there into the heat of battle. And it's like, I have a 2 or 3 minute stretch before Jabari comes back in, and I have to sink or swim. And I think
it's not like that was Jalen's first year. Like, it's not like we didn't see 2 years prior.
It was his first year doing that.
He's very athletic. His first year doing that. But his freshman year, he didn't really play. He didn't play at all until the last like 3 or 4 games.
And he exploded onto the scene when he started playing. And we all asked, why was he not playing more?
He exploded from his athleticism arena.
No. Check the tapes. I want to go back to our phone conversations. There was a whole conversation about how, does Bruce really knows what he's doing? Because it really feels like this Jalen Williams guy should have been playing way more this year.
There was some hype from the beat writers, different stuff. There was like, this Jalen guy is sitting on Jalen guy sitting on the bench, but I don't know why. He should be playing more or whatever. It's because it's like the game was too fast for him, basically, that he wasn't going to be a guy.
No. Just to be clear for the listeners, you were the one saying that stuff. You were like, I can't believe he hasn't been playing. Like, has Bruce lost it? Like, where did he get? Because Purifoy was at that position.
Oh, yeah.
Other guys. And you're like, why in the world is he not playing?
That comes from half of my, like, really being down on Purifoy.
You were a truther for Jalen Williams.
Oh, I wanted to play more. I thought, like, it's all circumstantial. Like, on that team, Jalen should have been playing more.
And then last year.
And then he was fine in the next year. Good, solid starter. I don't think I ever saw like moments where I was like, man, this guy's going to be the next guy. Like, you know how it was with Chuba. I was saying for a long time. Isaac the same way. Like, this guy's going to be special or whatever. I just don't quite feel with Jalen that he's supposed to be some special guy. It's his 4th year. I just don't I don't think he's going to be that special. Like, I think he's a good, solid starter, the kind of guy you want on your team to do the like dirty work.
I don't think
points
so.
per game on a team that didn't have any scores. Like,
no, okay. Well, I was going to compare his sophomore year to Chuma's sophomore year and see how much.
Okay, go ahead.
Why?
Sure.
Why can't we compare?
It's different. The guys on the team that need the ball were Jared and Bryce. There was no one on that team last year until Sharif came back that was like demanding the ball.
Besides the entire SEC schedule with Sharif Cooper, who had the ball in his hand.
That Sharif went out early. He only played 11 games.
Okay, that's 2/3 of the season, of the conference season.
I'm just saying, I don't think Jalen showed me anything last year.
I think
he should be a guy we build the team around if we want to win a national championship.
Okay.
I think like it makes me sound like a bad guy, but I think he's a solid guy. It would be amazing to get like 15 minutes out of next year.
That's garbage. That's terrible. So write this down, people. Use what's the writing little emoji you can put up, the writing the notes, when somebody freezing cold takes, we're going to send this cold takes. 15 minutes a game, you think is what we're going to get from him.
No, you're right. 15 to 20. It's going to be, I think they'll split the time. Jalen and Trey will split the time.
No.
And I think Trey will take over late. I wish we had our SEC preview notes because we couldn't find those before the thing to try to figure out what our freezing cold takes, what our good takes were.
So Julian
also, as I feel like we're set at the 4 position, and we're not going to be going after any other power forwards for the most part, unless you're talking about this weird like replacing, like doing a 4-5 position kind of thing.
I just think you need to be open to. I think our coaches, from who they're going after, I think they're open to finding the best fit as a 4/5, unless they know Stretch is leaving. If they know Stretch is leaving, then maybe you do bring in 2 guys. But I don't
really want to bring in, you want to bring in the broom guy or whatever. But if you could just if you just have to get somebody at center, like you kind of want to go through these like a Swiss Army knife almost. Like Cardwell's an energy guy, not that great. You might want to get like a stretch 7. I mean, it's like easy said, done to get a 7-footer. There's only so many of them, but like
Bruce also
times the Cardwell is going to be like look small compared to a couple guys from other teams,
Now Bruce hypes up his players. That's what he does. But he's been hyping up Cardwell too, like talking about his NBA potential. So just look out.
I praise Bruce all the time for being honest about stuff and being on point about stuff. So sometimes you got to look through some of this stuff. Yeah.
Do you? Please give me a list of times he said stuff about our players that's been like totally wrong and incorrect.
I have to start writing stuff down.
I'm just telling you.
I usually praise Bruce for being pretty like on point about everything and not being a bull. Like he's usually saying stuff. Yeah.
He doesn't throw stuff against the wall to say stuff. So like that's why I'm taking some of these things actually at his word. Like if he's watched Jalen all year in practice.
I just thought about one that he said we're not going to just take guys just to take guys. We have to take guys that are going to make our team better.
He took Javon Franklin.
Yes. That's been one of my biggest ones that Matt knows about, like on phone calls, that like it was the weirdest quote that he came out and said he wasn't going to just take guys. And he takes this weird JUCO guy out of nowhere that everyone says it's weird that he took him, and then he contributes to this team. Absolutely.
So there was one in 8 years. Okay.
I'm sure there's other little things.
No, I'm just saying.
Mostly compared to a lot of our coaches in other sports, man, Bruce is amazing. So
ultimately our difference here is you are really leaning into like trying to kind of like get ahead, right? Like, no, we have to be constantly like not only recruiting kids, but pushing kids out and making our team the best.
That's the future. And I think if we don't get a little cynical about this kind of thing, that we're going to fall behind in this like new world of essentially what it is you're remaking an AAU team every year. Of like, you go try to get the best players that'll play with your AU team. And this idea of like sticking with a couple guys, like the guys I would stick with on this team as like guys I want to like stick around with. Zep is my biggest one probably. Jalen Williams is probably next, of course, but like I'm not gonna like not recruit a 5-star guy or a big time transfer if it's gonna pick Jalen Williams off,
But here's the thing. I think you're making it a false dichotomy. Like you can do both. There's nothing about our roster right now. That's why I got fired up about Stretch. If Stretch wants to play on this team, there is zero reason we can't recruit over him and keep him. There's no reason. The numbers are fine.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, I don't know how many scholarships are left.
13. You can run 13.
So with Jabari and Walker out, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
We need
2 more spots left. We
need
one more center.
Potentially one. I need to see. I don't know if Lior's was a 1 year or if it's a renewing one.
Is Berman on here? Oh, so could it theoretically have 3 open right now?
No. It's only 1 or 2.
I thought you said so. We have 13 scholarships altogether, right?
Yeah, you're missing somebody. I've got 12 on that
5,
list.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You're right. I counted wrong.
But so we can bring in a big guy.
That's what I'm talking about. This kind of stuff where I think we need to take some more people. I think we need, so we can keep going down the list here. We definitely need a 3 that shoots threes. We have to get a sharpshooter at the 3 position.
The general consensus is that Auburn's going to add a big guy and a shooter.
Yeah, so we have to get some, and it's got to be, in my opinion, at the 3 position. Like, got to have a dude that's got a little, like 6'4", 6'5", that can shoot a 3, because we have these little small guards that apparently we're sticking with. So that's going to be another conversation in a minute. But I say you need somebody that could beat out Flanagan. I'm not worried about Lior. I'm not worried about Chris Moore. I'm surprised both of them are still here, honestly. I say you recruit the biggest 3 guy you can get from, like, on the 3 position. You hope Flanagan gets it together. But at any moment, we talked to Wes Flanagan on the interview. He coached the head coach this year. Any moment, Coach Flanagan go get a job somewhere, and Allen will go with him.
That's true.
Because Allen's struggled a bit. And
Al's been mentioned about transferring more than some of those guys you just mentioned.
Yeah, he's been frustrated this year, and it's his position again this year if he can get together, along with hopefully a big time transfer in that same position, somebody that shoots 35% plus and is over 6'4", 4 or 5 or 6.
Well, and Westry might be your guy. You have to remember that. That those positions are the same.
And Chance is 6'4", right? Something like that.
Pull him up. Actually,
he's tallish. He's not like a shorter guy, and so that's big. I think we got to go out there and get somebody at 3 position that shoots 3.
So and he's classified as a small forward. So he
6'6". Okay.
He's probably the guy that the coaches would plan on being that guy to kind of challenge Al or be behind Al.
But you want to move Chance up to that 3-line spot then?
The 2 and 3 are the same in our offense. I almost put them on the same line.
But okay, all right. You think that there's a chance we're playing Flanagan and Chance at the same time and not KD?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, so you need one more guy at the 2-3. So we're looking for one more dude. I just this gets into the conversation of the 2s and the 1s. I just think a fatal flaw on this team was how short our guards were and how they didn't shoot good down the stretch. I just don't know if I want to go into next year with our guard positions at the same spot or our guard positions with one new freshman guard or something like that. I'm a lot more harsh on this whole situation of if you want to build a national championship team again in this new era of AAU style stuff, you can't we saw the fatal flaws with Wendell. We saw the fatal flaws with KD at the times. You can't, we have to go get the best players we can get and worry about if KD or Wendell gets upset with it on their own. If KD and Wendell want to be upset that if we got a Yuri Collins at the point guard position and Wendell's upset about it,
who's not in the portal.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. He needs to get in the portal because there's no reason to be at St. Louis still.
Yuri Collins needs to listen to Jackson Garrett.
Exactly. Do I need to call him?
No. So I agree. You don't worry about their feelings. Here's the problem, though. We've seen with this staff how players get markedly better. This staff has done a tremendous job developing talent. I don't think anybody can argue that. So I'm not quite sure why you undersell so much the potential of those guards improving. They're not going to get taller, but they are going to be better.
I believe in Zep getting better.
Why would you believe in Zep getting better and not the other 2 guys?
I think Zep can develop an offensive game that he was meek about in this year, that we saw that he's very efficient from 3, but we couldn't have him shooting all the time because we had all these other players shooting. We had Wendell Green taking up so much space that we needed Zep to come in and kind of be differential to the rest of these players. And he doesn't have to be as differential now that it's a little more his team after a couple of guys have left now, I think Zepp is a guy you can build around a little more. I think one question I wanted to ask you about when we were going to get into this Wendell Green discussion was, did you feel like we were a good fast break team this year?
No.
Yeah, and I think a big reason for that is Wendell Green. I don't think he could, like, can you even think of like a moment really this year that Wendell Green led the fast break that you felt good about? I just don't think he's a good fast break guy. I don't think he's good at defense. I think he's a volume guy at point guard position shooting that we don't need. And I think it's a harsh thing because he played really well at times. That Iron Bowl game in Alabama and Tuscaloosa, amazing. So much fun to watch. Like, what a guy. I just don't, if you're building a new team every year at this point, he's not a guy that fits in. I think we hoped he would be, and his defense just isn't there. His fast break ability isn't there. He's a volume guy that can't seem to like.
So what do you, do you disagree that to me, it's not even a question that he was the best player on our team on our 19-game win streak?
I don't think he's doing any of that if Jabari and Walker aren't all around him doing the stuff with him. You know what I'm saying?
Walker wasn't doing anything. Walker wasn't doing anything for half that win streak.
You have to remember that with Jabari and Walker out, these guys are gonna have to do it with less good players sucking in the defense like a black hole. Walker half of Wendell's play was the fact that Walker was over there to catch those lobs or was a threat to catch those lobs, so Wendell could do his little finger rolls.
What do you think Cardwell's going to be, or Macklemore, or
not what Walker was?
Not
I think
what
that's
Walker
a discussion
was,
we have to have.
But
if these guys we're taking a big downgrade in the 4 or 5 positions. As much
no,
as
we're not. Why are we taking a big downgrade?
You think Trejo is going to be as good as the number 1 overall pick in the NBA?
If we bring in Julian Phillips, it's an upgrade.
I just think it's kind of like this. Not to bring up this other sport too much, but it's like this backup Heisman situation where everyone thinks the guy that's going to come in after the Heisman guy is going to. You hit on a 5-star like Jabari and Walker. You can't expect the next 5-star to be hit on. You kind of are going to get some misses.
That's fair, but I also don't think it's fair to say that Jalen, Johan, and whoever else we bring in are just going to be like.
I don't think it'd be bad. I don't think it'd be bad. I think I'm very excited about them. I just think you got to admit that the chances are very high chances you take a little bit of even if it's just a little bit of a step back.
Yeah,
from what
sure.
we did this year. So you need your guards to be a little bit of a step up. And I just don't have faith that KD and Wendell are going to make these big steps up. They have these fatal flaws of how.
And I think that's crazy. I don't think that's realistic at all.
All right? So going to Wendell. All right, what do you think Wendell's going to improve on?
I think Wendell can improve on a ton. I think you saw that. I think he's going to figure out. I saw enough greatness from him this year that I'm not going to.
I think he's
blank out 2/3 of the season.
I think they figured him out. I think people know how to defend him now. I don't think he's going to have this like surprise factor that he had anymore. It's going to be worse next year.
I just don't know why you would think somebody who's playing at a P5 level for the first time can't get better when he's a 19-year-old kid.
I think it's kind of like the Jared Harper in the NBA situation.
Did Jared Harper get better over 3 years?
Now I'm talking about Jared Harper in the NBA situation.
Jared Harper at Auburn. Did Jared Harper?
But Jared Harper was a lot better than Wendell Green. I always had faith that Jared Harper was going to keep getting better. He's way more athletic than Wendell. Played way better defense. Like maybe not in his first year, but Wendell's a volume guy. I think this is the discussion we talked about in their text messages, and that it was going to be a little heated. I just don't believe in Wendell as a guy that fits into the system. This like play hard defense, turn people over, fast break offense, get the ball distributed. Like I think Wendell's a detriment on the team next year. If you're going to rebuild this whole team, yeah, I think he's fine. I think he's going to go out there and beat Georgia and beat St. Louis and beat these other teams that are inferior. But if you're building a national championship team, it's just going to be a fatal Achilles heel against some of these other teams, like this bigger, faster, stronger teams. He's just not. There's a reason he was at wherever he was at before. What was it, Eastern Kentucky? Like I think he might be a perfect fit at like a smaller P5 school or a bigger G5 school. And we're trying to win national championships.
Maybe he'll go back. Maybe he'll leave. Right? No, I think it's ridiculous.
These players are transferring every year now. I don't know what the actual rule is if he's like actually able to transfer now, but I feel like these players just transfer every year. So it feels like he could just move on to the next thing he's going to move on to.
So, I couldn't disagree more. I just think I think it's ridiculous. I think he was the key to our team's success and the reason why we won the
And
SEC
the key
this
to our
year.
team's failure down the stretch too.
You know who else had some stuff to do with that? You know, our number one pick that went volume shooting out in the Miami game.
Because he had to, in my opinion. I think that was the thing down the stretch, is that Walker Jabari went up and our depth went down. They got figured out. KD and Wendell had a lot of struggles down the stretch where they got figured out.
So in league play, I sent you this. Just plus minus is not a great stat to look at for a game because it's so arbitrary in a lot of ways because there's 5 guys on the floor. But if you count SEC play, not non-conference, which you're saying is his primary, you know, where he belongs.
I think early SEC play.
No. The whole season. This takes every game for 18 games for all SEC teams. By a long shot of all players in the league, Wendell Green had by 25% the best plus minus in the league. And I just want to list off the names of the players he was ahead of.
You don't even have to list them out. The fact that Wendell is at the top of any statistical thing like that as most important player on a team, you already know it's incorrect stat. It's an incorrect like usage of whatever that is, because you know there's 20 players that you would take over Wendell Green.
Well, that's kind of my point. So how many of these players would you take over Wendell Green? I assume all of them.
At some point you got to admit that the stats not as intuitive as you want to be. You know, if that's how it is.
No. Do you not? I'm going to read the top 10. Okay. Tell me if you don't think this is a representation of the league this year. Okay. Oscar Tshiebwe, JT Note, Walker Kessler, Kennedy Chandler, Severe Wheeler, Jabari Smith, Katie Johnson, Vescovy, Jordan James.
So we have 4 players in that top 10? 3, 4?
We had 4.
So we had a really good team. I wonder if that's how this skews the statistics.
But why is Wendell double Jabari?
Because maybe when he plays really bad, this team sucks. And when we played really good because the point guard position was that important. You put a different guy in that position, maybe his plus minus is even better. You have a better player in that position. You have the Yuri Collins in that position. You have another big point guard in that position. Maybe his plus minus is even higher.
Why are the rest of the team's point guards not high?
Maybe it kind of shows that. Well, maybe it shows that Wendell Green, his performance in our teams either trashed our team or completely went the other direction because he was that important. He was the linchpin, but he should have had to have been the linchpin.
That's not how stats work. You don't get this. That's not how this stat works. You don't get to. Well, he's so good that it covers up the really bad. That if you're terrible, if when you're on the floor, your team's getting outscored consistently, you are not going to be on this board. You're going to be at the bottom. So I'm not saying it's a.
I don't know about the stat. I just know that any stat that has Wendell Green as the number 1 guy above Jabari, above Walker, above all these other star players is just incorrect because he's not even close to the top 25 player in the SEC.
You know what plus minus is though, right?
Yeah, explain it to me again. You explained it to me last time.
It's not a complicated stat. It's just is your team when you're on the floor ahead or behind, and it just takes that into account the whole season. So what this says is throughout the 18-game gauntlet of the SEC, there was no player that was on the floor for more of his team's advantage in scoring.
So that means we had that much drop off in point guard. The next guy was that much of a drop off that it was that much plus. Maybe I'm undergoing Zep. I think Zep's so good, but really our offense was that much better when Wendell was in.
So Wendell was plus 210 points ish for the regular season when he's on the floor. Auburn was plus 210. For Zep, it was plus 62 or 64, right next to Devin Cambridge. For Jabari,
was that big? So the stat helps also with whatever your biggest drop off is whenever you're not on the floor. Is that a thing?
The stat is literally that Auburn outscored its opponents by over 200 points this year in SEC games when Wendell Green was on the floor.
Maybe my basketball IQ is awful. I'm just saying any stat that has Wendell Green that high up, I don't believe it.
All I'm saying
is he's not that good. He had so many issues this year. Like the volume of the shooting was awful. He lost us games. He clearly couldn't handle the pressure. of the defenders down the stretch. We clearly figured out like how to stop his little lob game thing. They figured out how to make him shoot bad shots constantly. Didn't play good defense. Our fast breaks weren't good.
I don't know I thought he was a good defender. I didn't think
abused down the stretch. Down the stretch, people figured out how to get him down low and open up a bunch of other stuff on the offense. Even if they didn't abuse him down low, when everybody had to crash on that position, they'd pass back out to an open shooter. And then I don't remember him being like any good against this other point guard people. I don't remember him like smothering somebody else, while we talked about KD and Zep constantly about how great they smothered everybody else. And then Wendell he disappeared on defense. Like maybe that's a good thing. I don't know.
I thought that he rose to the occasion defensively because of those situations.
I just think that was peak defense for Wendell, and it's not going to get any better. And we have to improve our guard positions.
Why can't he get better?
If we're going to have our foreign centers worse.
You think 24-year-old Zep is going to get better this year, and Wendell can't get better?
Yeah, I don't think 24 is some like large number or whatever. We talk about the Miami guards, how much better they were as they got older. I think like if you were talking about 30-year-old Zep, it'd be a different issue. But 24 is not at like an age you don't peak at. No. NBA players peak at like the late 20s.
I'm not talking about his age. I'm talking about the fact that this is his 6th year in a college basketball program. This is Wendell's
I think you saw Zep get better as the year went on. I think we saw that his offense can really start picking up.
I'm the Zep Jasper fan club president. Zep's really good, but he's not Wendell Green. And I mean that in a bad way. He's not. We don't have another guy on this roster. You can talk about upgrading.
We don't have another guy on this roster that can do what Wendell does. I think we could go out and recruit a guy that could be better for this team than Wendell could be.
Maybe, but I just haven't heard any names.
I just don't think his like style of play fits with what Bruce really needs to do. You know.
I disagree with that completely. I thought he's maybe not a perfect fit, but I think he fits in really well with the style we want to play. He can adjust the volume of shots he takes. He can improve his shot selection.
I just think down the stretch, he got exposed in his like Achilles heel on defense. They just started getting the balls down low on him. How many games do we see in a row down the stretch where they worked the ball to where Wendell Green was underneath the basket having tried to defend somebody, which is not so awful, but it was a trend down the stretch. I mean, he admitted himself that he had to figure something out. And I don't think it's something he's got to figure out. I think it's just the Achilles heel of being a 5'9" or 10
he can't
point
get
guard.
any better.
I don't think I think it's going to get worse, honestly.
Wow.
Yes. I think that they figured out this logo 3 thing. They just keep pushing him further and further out. It's not going to work. I think his finishing on drives has gotten so bad. We talk about comparing to Jared, which sucks that we're always comparing him to Jared, compared to McCormick too. Both of them could finish the ball at speed against the glass, and Wendell just can't. He gets absolutely like demolished down there at this point, and he can't pass it out the way he used to. Maybe that's because the 3 position wasn't somewhere you pass it out to.
Wendell did most of the year. You're blocking out all the good and the parts of the year where he honestly.
I think what you're doing is you're putting too much, like you're not seeing the trend that it's gotten. It's just
I see the trend, but the trend from March and February, and I agree, he couldn't quite piece it together at the end of this year.
And to me, that says that's going to keep happening.
But what do you say to the rest of the team, though? I mean, like that's not a Wendell problem.
I thought it was a Wendell problem, and that Wendell was a big problem of why we went down on that stretch. Our guards just got figured out. And that's why Jabari had to go nuts the way he had to, because all of a sudden our depth and our guys just couldn't. KD had issues too. We have talked KD too.
So my thing, you talk a big game, like if you can upgrade, but here's the thing, I'll be honest.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like you said, I'm not trying to just kick Wendell Green out. I just think like it's a new era. It's an AAU era where you just go and you get the best players you can and put them together, and you don't plan around Wendell Green. And if I'm Bruce, I'm out there and I'm trying to find a point guard, another point guard for this team that I feel like fits a little better, that's going to play more defense, that's going to be a little taller, that's going to hit a higher 3 percentage, that's not going to shoot these logo 3s.
He would be the last point guard to get run off. It would be the other 2 guys before him.
That's fine. I'm cool with Trey going too. I like Zep better, honestly.
Yeah, but they would make room with Zep before they would make room.
I just don't think it fits. I don't think it fits with Wendell. I think it's like.
So I'm just curious.
Figured out is what I'm trying to say. I just think that the SEC defense got film on him and figured out his fatal flaws and that he's too small. Like this whole pressing up on him, he can't seem to pass out of 2 players on him, and it's going to be a fatal flaw.
So I assume you feel the same way about KD and Flanagan.
Yeah, man. It sucks. It sucks. I think KD's got some issues too. I do think that KD can improve a little more on his spot up 3 shooting game, and that he's athletic enough to where I don't think you're running anybody off, but you're also not going to get a 2 that's 6'3" and can finish with a dunk, unlike KD.
So you don't
I don't think you're playing around KD either. Like,
so I was just going to be clear that it sounds like you would recruit over every player, which I guess is your point, right? You recruit over.
It's a new era. If you can
recruit
find
over everybody every year.
Yeah, it sucks, but like, and it's gonna be tough to figure out like the logistics if you're out there recruiting. These guys don't get pissed off and leave on you, but like they'll leave on you no matter what. You saw Justin Powell just hike up and leave one day. Like you recruit everybody you can. You get the best guys out there. It's kind of like in the NFL draft, they talk about this concept of, do you recruit or do you draft based off of needs, or you draft based off of just the best player available? I'm out here in college basketball these days. If we're going to be this transfer everywhere all the time thing, I am doing that. Every guy that comes in the portal, if they're over a certain guy for you, I'm going to get him, and I'm not worried about who's on my team.
Why do you think we're not doing?
I think we're a little behind the times. I think it's tough to go to like.
What evidence do you have? Look at this team he put together this year.
I mean, that's the first year. That's the first year that we've been able to do this one-time transfer thing, really. And he went out and he got those guys.
We killed it.
He killed it. I think we don't know yet how to do this a second time. I think we're in a new era. This is a new frontier. I think there's a whole thing where it's like, okay, we did a good job with people that left. We filled those positions with better players. Now the question is going to be, what do we do with the guys that came? You know what I'm saying? Do we transfer the transfers? And I think you have to, but I think like you can't like hold on to these guys just because they came in and filled out last time, you know?
Well, so how bad if with what we're looking at on our screen right now, if that's the roster next year, how rough is it in your mind?
Oof.
Like 8th in the SEC?
Yeah, somewhere down there probably. It depends on how good Trejo is, but man, we had the National Defensive Player of the Year, who also developed a pretty decent offense. The #1 overall NBA guy with an amazing 40+% shooting 3. And then we still like down the stretch started to really
you know who they got punked by?
Miami with a bunch of guards.
Bunch of 22-year-olds who were grown men who knew what they were doing.
Yeah, go recruit some 22-year-old grown men, I guess.
That's what you got. You got experienced guys on this roster. Now, look, I don't think next year's team is going to be quite as.
Can you imagine trying to run offense with these guys on the court right now? Like,
I don't worry about running. That's what I was going to say. The biggest difference between us would be looking at that list.
Well, then you want to run fast break and defensive stuff, but you want Wendell Green in? He couldn't do that all year. I don't feel like I felt good about him being in as a fast break guy all year. You remember how it is? We couldn't seem to pass the ball in fast breaks. We couldn't finish on fast breaks. Like, that's our guards. Our guys just didn't know how to do it.
I was going to say, it's not Wendell.
KD couldn't do it. Zep couldn't do it. Wendell Green couldn't do it. We got to be able to finish those. If you're going to do a fast break, at least KD, I still feel like could get a little better at that. He did that weird thing. We would stop and get a foul. I think he could avoid that and get a little better at that. But
it's not realistic. We're not going to add 4 guys. We're just not. I mean, like, you can
maybe we
should think Bruce doesn't know like how to evaluate talent and build a team. But ultimately,
he's trying to play the game of, I don't want to piss off some of these players and then they leave, and then we have to go get a guy that maybe is not as good as them. So like, it's like this weird game, like where you're like, if a better guy comes, I'm going to get a better guy. But I can't run off my guys before
It blows my mind that you don't think we're doing that.
I don't know for sure. Really, he's talking about building the team around Jalen Williams and all this stuff. Like
we're in on tons of transfers.
All right. Well, I'm not saying we're not doing it necessarily. I'm saying this is what we should do. If we're doing it, great. But they like Dylan Cardwell said when we interviewed them, they're going to keep their moves silent, and they're not going to come out there and talk about what their strategy is. You know,
I would just disagree that I think that roster right there should be picked right about where we were this year, and we saw how that turned out. I think this could be a really good team. I don't know. I'm really high on Jalen. I'm really high on Flynn.
We're looking at the same roster, right? We got Cardwell and Akimbola as our centers.
I think you're looking at a bunch of guys on this roster that are SEC champs. They're more
This is
experienced.
like playing our second line at all times with Walker and Jabari out. Like we had some games where that worked out for us, but you knew
I was gonna
Walker and
say,
Jabari.
I saw that. I saw the strength
That's not
of
what you
this.
want to do all year. That's going to get schemed around all day. That only worked because it was kind of a change-up pitch. You throw change-ups all day, and then they had a bunch of homers all day.
No, the
change-up is a pitch
was
you throw every like 10th pitch or whatever, you know.
the changeup was we had 9 dudes that could play and beat you. And
if we're going to go that way, I'm just saying, if we're going to go fast break, smothering defense, you don't want Wendell then.
We're not going to go anything. We're going to do the Auburn thing. We're going to do the same thing we did with Jabari and Walker with some slightly different offensive variation.
We changed up what we did with Walker and Jabari during the year.
Yeah, because we had freakazoids. Like that's not our offense. That was weird. It was weird how much ISO we did with the power forward. It was weird that we actually threw it into Kessler occasionally. Like those are not parts. Those will not be what we do next year, but it's not because we're changing our whole philosophy. It's just because we don't have those two guys anymore.
I think I'm hoping, most people only listen to our podcast this year and even halfway through probably whatever, but I think we've been pretty realistic just talking on the phone going into each year, like what our expectations were has worked out pretty decently. And I think coming into this year, we expected a great team and it worked out, and then this year, if this is the roster, I'm not going to expect a great team. It's not because I'm some pessimist that thinks that things don't go the way we want to. Before the pandemic team with Sharif and all them, we didn't expect some great team. We thought, okay, this could be a scrappy team or whatever, so I'm hoping we'll be keeping up with how the roster changes. Our thoughts and our whatever are going to influence anything, but what I'm saying, we're going to change our opinions as this, because it's so insane how much rosters change. I mean, my opinions on how this roster could change by one player or another in the my next podcast we do, one guy changes one way or the other and my opinions change dramatically. The fact before Trejo signed onto this, I would have been like, oh God, we got to step it up. Now Trejo's on, I'm like, all right, we're heading somewhere, but we still need another player too. I'm really curious. Then you have opinions like when that dude signed after Bruce said he wasn't going to sign people just to sign people. So if we sign another 3, but his 3 percentage was 20% or something like that, and be like, well, that's not exactly what we needed. Are we betting on Flanagan to get better? Are we it's all playing games right now of what we expect, and these players can prove me wrong. Yeah,
and we're getting worked up about it, and we have no idea who the roster will be, so we really shouldn't worry about it right now. I see a lot of good building blocks to build around. Really, Cambridge is probably, I hate to say it, but it's probably a net increase to open that up. The way he shot this year, at least,
Are you getting? So here's another one. Are you getting? So I'm getting rid of, in a polite way. I'm not kicking people off, but I don't want Chris. If Chris Moore and Lior and Akable are still on the team, I feel like we missed an opportunity to go find some other dudes that could be better, that could have a higher ceiling. I'm not against Chris Moore. I don't know what happened this year with Chris Moore. I thought he had a little more in him than this year, but I'm not betting.
I don't. I don't think that's a sign, because nobody has 12 or 13 players that are all going to expect to play.
Maybe it's because we bet on Flanagan that he was going to turn around. He was going to turn. It never did. But how bad the 3 position was, that Chris Moore could have got more playing time. But that might be suspect to the fact that we thought that we could play through Flanagan's bad play and that it would turn around.
I like Chris Moore a lot.
I'm cool with Chris Moore, like I said.
But I just look. Ultimately, I just think I'm in a weird role reversal. You've always been the Flanagan guy. I think maybe you're just spooked by how rough it was.
I want Flanagan on the team. I'm not. I think this is a game. I think this is a way you can kind of purse this out. Which players on this team could leave, and you think we have a better than 50% shot of having a better player come in his place?
I don't think
betting odds, if he leaves, I have a 51% chance that someone better would come.
I would just say Lior, Chris Moore, and Stretch would be the only 3 for me.
Yeah, I agree. Those are the 3 that are the most for sure. I feel good if they leave that we're going to fill it with something better.
But again, I've heard, just for for what it's worth. I've heard we have 2 spots, so that either means Trey would count towards football, or Leor was a 1-year scholarship thing. So I've heard we have 2 right now.
I'm hoping that's true about the Leor one. I don't think I don't know. Even if Donaldson plays the other sport, I kind of want him just to see. I don't want to waste too much time with him of figuring out if he's going to be good or not. You know, like I don't want to like get a half season and not really know like, so was he good or, you know, like, you know.
Well, if you keep Gwendol off, you can play him a lot more, and then you can see what you got.
I don't want to have to. That's where I'd go get transfer, you know. But if he doesn't play the other sport, we can figure it out pretty quick.
If I was meeting you halfway, I would say I understand it's a concern that those 3 guards that we saw this year are all 6 foot and below.
I think we got schemed against a bunch down the stretch that it was an issue, and that's why our 3-point shooting dropped off so bad from the guards and stuff. That people knew they weren't a threat in other ways. You know?
Okay, well that's where we differ. I think Zepp's a big threat from 3. I think Wendell.
Yeah, I think so too. I think
Wendell's a terrific shooter. I want to go on record. I think Wendell's a really good shooter.
What's his percent this year? You got that pulled up?
Yeah, let's check.
I want to know because it was weird because
it went way down. It went way down.
Yeah, we asked him to stop shooting so many stupid logo one stuff. As much as I'm cool with a logo every once in a while, he I don't know what his actual percentage was when it came to like shooting open. He didn't really get any open threes because that's like part of the strategy with him was to run him off that line and make him either drive or not or shoot a ridiculously far 3, and then they clogged up the lane on him. So it became like a whole, like, you know, they'll have to figure out something else to do with him. Looking at the stats here on Wendell, I think he just clicked.
So the other thing, he was 32%.
For the amount he shot, that's not a good percentage, but you know.
So, but again, you just got to keep in mind.
29% from KD. I think KD's can get better. He had a weird thing where he would have to dribble to shoot, and I think that's a thing you can fix in the off season. You start doing a lot more practice on the catch and shoots for him.
Here's the problem. And I'll try to explain this as best I can. KD's 29 is way, way, way worse than Wendell's 31.7. And here's why. You always have to take into account on a team who has to take the crappy end of shot clock when nothing worked and somebody has to shoot. Wendell probably was the guy like.
But half the time it was his fault for not getting anything going.
Well, sure, you could say that, but like, let's
look at Zepp though. Zepp, I remember many times. I remember Zepp more often than Wendell getting those weird end of shot clock ones, and he had shot 36%.
Well, but look, did Zepp shoot the ball?
Because he didn't shoot stupid ones like Wendell did all day long.
That's fine, but somebody's got to shoot when the clock's going down.
Zepp did that too when he was the guy.
No, he didn't. That's not a fair.
I remember thoroughly Zepp having to shoot.
He did occasionally. It happened like 10 times this year.
You think Wendell had that many more?
Absolutely.
But why did he have that many more?
Because he had the ball in his hands all the time. Because that's what Bruce wanted.
Okay, it's not like he couldn't pass the ball too. Zepp passed the ball, so.
You can't pass the ball at the end when you're 1-on-1 in 2 seconds.
Saying
here, I want to see.
We're looking at Jared Harper's stats.
I want Jared Harper college stats.
Yeah, we're looking at Jared Harper. See what his 3 percentage was down the stretch there.
Yeah, I want to see because Jared had the same problem. In terms of
5'11", I'm surprised. I thought we listed everybody under 6 foot, exactly 6 foot.
Yeah, he's 5'8". He's whatever.
Didn't know that people were allowed to be below 6 foot.
So Jared was 34, 35, 37. So
37 is last year.
Yeah.
Damn, yeah, that's great.
And that's great for when again, same logic.
And he was just a better finisher too. He was a stronger finisher.
Well,
I do like that Wendell's developed a little more of that like mid-range kind of thing. He had a better jump shot than Jared did. I hate that we have to compare him to Jared so much, but there are both small point guards, but that's how we've done it, you know.
Well, that's how Bruce has had it.
Can we look up Javon McCormick's? Is that crazy to look that up right now?
Oh god.
Remember he hit a bunch of threes down the stretch in his senior year. You were at that LSU game. You single-handedly won us that game at the end.
I was. It was amazing.
Sorry to all the podcast listeners that are listening to ramble about this like roster down the stretch, but I just find this so interesting, and feel free to break up this podcast into several like You might not get another one for another month, so feel free to like pause it and come back to it later on. Here's K Bonds.
He was 50% his first year when he barely shot any.
Yeah, the best.
And then 30% his main year.
Same as Wendell, right?
1.2 lower.
Yeah, and we talked about Wendell, some great 3-point shooter. McCormick was 1 point lower.
I think Wendell's a better shooter.
He might be. He just took a bunch of dumber ones.
He made some incredible, like he showed a lot of range. He does need to tone down some of the forces. He needs to quit. But I think personally, I think you're really undervaluing how important he was when we were clicking. Like, he was the key. So you can say it's his fault.
I think we were clicking, and then the SEC got film on it and figured it out.
That's not how basketball works, though. I mean, it's just not, in my opinion.
I think they started scheming around it and
sure,
went off that play. Like we talked about, like we tried to figure out why that whole lob game wasn't working. We tried to figure out what they were clogging the lane on him. They knew he couldn't finish on that. They were making him shoot those long threes because they were driving him off the line. They weren't afraid of him passing the ball out to an open shooter. It's the whole thing.
By the way, Wendell's 2-point percentage was about the same as Jared Harper's for 3 years.
Fair enough.
So if you can't, and look, I'm not saying Wendell has as much to do with how the season ended as anybody. Like, he does. But
I guess it diverges on our beliefs that you think that
I think
the overall season was like where he's going to be. And mine is I'm really putting a lot of weight on the end of the season stuff as like that's the real what's going to happen next year.
I think he's somewhere in the middle. I think he would. I think he went into some stratosphere that even caught us off guard. If you listen to our podcast, he was playing incredibly well for most of the year.
You think you think he was in a funk at the end of the year? I think it was schemed out. I think the defenses in the SEC figured out what to do against him, and it's not a thing you're going to get away from. I don't think you're going to figure out how to stop people from backing down Wendell in the paint. I don't think you're going to stop people from pushing up on pressing him and him not being able to look above the two players to throw the ball out.
And I think that you can't think that we have one of the best coaching staffs in America. And
that's why the best coach staff goes and gets another guy that's a little quicker. Slower than Jared was.
The best coaching staff knows how to actually adjust and adapt and figure it out. And I think they will. I think they'll adjust things. I think you could make the same exact argument you're making for Zepp, for KD, for Flanagan. I don't think this is.
I am making those arguments that they've all got issues.
My issue is that you seem to have, in your narratives at least, singled out Wendell as like this. Like I believe you said he is a detriment to next year's team in your eyes. I think the way he plays basketball is just not what we're looking for on these Bruce Pearl teams. It's what Bruce Pearl's teams do. He fits that. Unfortunately, I don't like it all the time, but he just is.
I just think you can find another guy that's a little more athletic, a little faster, that's not going to get stuck in these screens. I just think Wendell's he's just going to be a great volume guy at a slightly smaller school. I think he's just a little above his punching weight.
All I know is if that staff could make Javon McCormick a good contributor in that first season, I hope to death
that Wendell comes out next year and he's the guy that went to the weight room and turned into some dude, and it's just like blows me away with his like dribbling ability and his passing ability, and he's unstoppable. But I can't see it. I can't imagine he's got that much ceiling left,
We'll find out, because I don't think he's going anywhere.
And to be fair, I'm not going to be angry or anything with him or cheering for him to go down or anything. I'm going to be cheering that he becomes like this all-time great that I like have egg all over my face or whatever. I'll go outside and go shoot a crow and eat it myself. But I just like, if we're playing this game of what would you do, I would be out there looking for another guy.
No, I appreciate it, and I think we probably are, but I don't know. I just think higher of our guards than you do.
I think in both sports we've been for years friends talking about stuff. You generally lean more to the guys on our roster as like guys that can improve and be better, and the like highs of their highs are indicative of where they can be. And I'm more on the pessimist side. That's like the lows of their lows are who they really are, and we have to we have to figure out around that. And so I think I'm sure we're somewhere kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's what makes our conversation so interesting sometimes. But like, it's just a trend in our friendship and our podcasting, isn't it?
No, I think it's great. I think it's good to have like those differing opinions. You know, I honestly, until you texted me that the other day, I had never once even considered that viewpoint. Because to me, Wendell was such a pivotal part of this championship run that we had. Like I didn't even think to see it that way. And you do make some really good points. And we do have to fix a lot of things with every one of those guys. Like, honestly, that's why I'm so high on Jalen. I don't think Jalen has a lot of stuff to fix. Flanagan scares me how bad and how rough he looked most of this year.
Jalen had some issues dribbling the ball, but he's also power forward, so it's not like we expect power forwards to like, you know.
Well, KD terrifies me because I don't know what he's going to do. And Zep is like, I love Zep for what he is, but I don't know if in
it's funny that I'm the one that thinks that Zep has like a higher ceiling, and you're the one that loves Zep so much. Because I think his offensive game is a hidden gem that we didn't utilize this year.
I agree. It'll be more next year. And I think he can live up to that.
And he scored like 25 plus or something like that, college at Charleston or something.
13 really? Or 14. Mm-hmm.
Who am I thinking of that was a scorer that stopped scoring? Maybe, I don't know.
More stats.
Gotta look up Zep.
Is there anything else we should discuss?
I just think ultimately what I'm trying to do is you're seeing these guys develop, and I'm thinking to myself, we're losing two of the best guys ever to play the game at Auburn. And so if we're like adjusting or whatever, I can't expect the next guys in this position to be that good no matter who we recruit. So I feel the need to, if we want to be as good as we were this year, to step up in other ways. And that would be in the guard and 3 positions. And I feel like maybe I'm playing this game where I expect these players to not improve at all or not learn anything and come back. And I'm like thinking, what would this team have been like without Walker and Jabari? And I don't think they would have been very good, or at least not like, you know, not what we want them to be. Yeah, championship level.
You said before, you're going for natties, you're going for national championships.
Yeah, so then I'm like,
what we're all doing.
And if we're just putting together like a team, this is another interesting, not to like drag this podcast forever, but we also decided to jump on early to like, so we could talk about whatever we want to talk about as long as we want to talk about it. But like, if you're like putting a team together in this day and age, I talked about how the one-time transfers, stuff like that, you're kind of treating the G5 as like a minor league at this point. And I think the ultimate strategy for me is you get like 1 or 2 5-star dudes from high school. And then every year you go find the best G5 guys to fill in the rest of the roster. And that's all you do with high school. If it's not a 5-star stud, just ignore it. You can go get a transfer from Morehead State that's going to be better than a 4-star high school guy immediately. And you can just keep them going at all times. And it sucks because you're going to have some years where the plates fall and you didn't have them all spinning at the same time. But you just try to start a new AAU team every year. And the only high school guys you want are those 5-star guys. And you don't worry about like if a transfer the year before didn't quite step up to that next level, because the next year you're just spinning them again. You know?
But I just want to point out that's exactly what we're doing. We have 3 top 100 recruits that are signing and that have already signed or whatever. And we're going to get
a little more of a project than I think I would want to take these days, but
that's just a side.
Most people I've heard from, I mean, I'm not some big recruiting expert or anything like that. He's highly regarded from a star standpoint or whatever, but like just from hearing recruiting people, hearing beat writers and stuff, people are like, he's probably not going to be ready to be a star in his first year. He's going to be a guy that plays the next year as the star, you know.
This is his other page.
Star guy. You had it open.
Maybe
4-star, number 47 in Florida.
That was his football page.
Oh, was it? Oh.
So he's 141. He's up to 140. Top 150.
Number 38 point guard in the nation at a high school. It's not like you expect him to come in and be like a stud starter for you, you know.
Good enough to be better than our crappy guards.
Maybe. How tall is he?
He is 6'2".
Maybe I'm hyper focused on just how abused our short guys got.
The one thing we haven't talked about that maybe adds a little layer of thought to this is, you know, everybody's going crazy with these transfers, and you're right. It kind of seems like everything goes, but like for instance, if Bruce were to tell Wendell Green, okay, we brought somebody else in, like you need to go somewhere else, doesn't he have to sit out?
I don't know what it is anymore. It just feels like no one's sitting out. So I can't imagine, like, maybe we're screwing up and people are yelling at us from the other end of the podcast that we're idiots for not bringing up this whole thing. I just have not seen you guys sit out in a couple of years. So I don't even know what the deal is anymore. Rules don't seem, we can get into that whole discussion. Rules don't seem to matter anymore in college athletics. So I don't even like know, like, what would you just put a hardship waiver in now? Like, wasn't that the whole reason we started doing this transfer thing? So you didn't have to do this bull crap transfer waiver thing. And then like, just does it matter anymore? I don't know.
No, you're right. It's crazy out there.
It's the fact that we run a podcast and care this much and don't really know what the deal is. And like Dabo came out and said the government needs to work with NCAA because it's getting so outrageous that the government's making these laws and not even like considering any ramifications at all. And NCAA is so scared of its own shadow, they won't come out and say, can you guys stop breaking everything because they already broke it. It's just so bad right now, isn't it?
It is, but I still love it. I love especially the basketball side.
Basketball seems the least broken, and it feels pretty broken. But at
and
least
it always historically has been the most like dirty and the most egregious like of any sport, really.
For some reason, it feels a little like I'm not as like worried about the future of college basketball as I am about the other sport.
Well, I think that's because basketball is easier to compete in.
Yeah,
football is not.
Maybe it's because of how many players there are, how much money's in the other one, that it didn't feel like it's quite like.
But football, there's this huge disparity, right?
Yeah,
sorry,
the equality doesn't feel as bad. Yeah,
like there's a danger that we've already seen with like 5 programs just like launching away with money and power and players, and now they're talking about getting rid of scholarship limits, going back to the way it was with Bear Bryant, having 100.
Do you even need scholarships anymore when you can pay quarterbacks $8 million to come to your school? Why is he even on scholarship at that point?
But in basketball, St. Peter's can look Kentucky in the eye after getting hot in the conference tournament, not even having a great season, and beat Kentucky and have the story of the like. It's possible.
You wonder if you talk to an LSU fan though, and they'll say college basketball is completely broken. You lose your coach for whatever reason, and your entire basketball team is gone. Like, you know, like
maybe you should have not kept him for 6 years. Well. They knew
maybe that's part of it, is that there's always been a little more transferring and like weird roster stuff going on in college basketball. So this doesn't seem quite as crazy, you know, like you've always been able to get a team, or maybe we've not been as historically invested in college basketball. So we don't even know what it used to look like, you know, 15, 20 years ago, like to have a great team, you know?
Well, it's going to be interesting. And I think our conversation just shows like, our roster could look a lot of different ways between now and October. You know,
we're having this heated discussion on our podcast about it. Imagine having to make these real decisions as coaches about kids you care about and all this stuff. And like, there's got to be some coaches that agree with me in there that are like, it's the Wild West. We got a Wild West. And so a bunch of other coaches be like, no, you want to kick our boy Wendell off the team? Like, you know, like.
I just think you have to be careful with like, Auburn did a really good job of bringing all these randos together this year, and they got along well, and they clearly had a good vibe, and they won a lot of games.
So you got to do it again, start over again. See, you clearly can do it. So you do it again.
But it's littered. The country's littered with teams that is not the case when you bring in a bunch of random guys into this group. So Bruce, I think, will always do a good job of that. He's a really good team builder and a good kind of. He
they're all going to go to Israel together and become best friends. Y'all didn't listen to our Steven. That's another one of those little gems you get when you listen to the Jungle podcast. You get an interview with Stephen Pearl where he says they're probably going to go to Israel this summer as their once every 4-year international trip.
Well, I think we need to split this podcast up into 2 episodes.
maybe
or 3.5 hours.
It was worth it. One last thing to talk about. We have a tournament in Mexico now announced against some nobodies. Is that our only international tournament?
So we don't know yet. I was looking for sources on like they don't really release the whole schedule for another little while longer.
I just feel like you only get one, and I just, you know, they talk about you can't go to the same ones every time. You know, like it's only the Hawaii one every 4 years or something like that. You can only do the Bahamas one, I'm sure, every 2 or 3 years or something. But you would think there's enough of them around now that we could get a better one than this one. Like even that one we did in Brooklyn that time was better than this one.
Yeah, I can't find anything. I know there's been certain games that are like out there that we know are going to happen, like this tournament. But it's nothing has been like fully.
Kentucky usually has one or two of these tournaments, right? Like they'll go to like Las Vegas for a big one and then go to another spot for another game or two, right?
They get invited to special stuff that we don't.
Can you only do one? Why wouldn't you just do them all the time?
No, they play multiple because they'll play in like the Champions Classic where
they'll usually play like an actual big one and then play in like a 4-game, like a 4-team, like small one, right?
Yeah.
Like it's got like 3 other really big teams, and then another one where they've got like actual, like a big field, like the Bahamas one. So maybe there's a chance that we're playing in this like crappy little one, and we're going to also play in like some tournament in Orlando or some tournament like kind of closer that's still a pretty big one, you know? I hope so. I'll be a little disappointed in our, like, after having so much fun with the Bahamas one, it'll be a little disappointing if our best games are like Northwestern and Bradley. You know, like
just calm it down. Bruce knows what he's doing. We'll have a good non-conference schedule, whether it's tournament.
Maybe we got some like good home and homes coming up or something. That's like part of the fun about college basketball is they'll put together games like in the season. Somebody's got COVID, they'll go play somebody else or whatever. While the other sport we're like scheduled out for a decade. You know.
Yeah, it'll come together. The whole SEC has done so much better job of scheduling for like tournament purposes to get your resume good and like knowing who to play and where to play them and how to balance that schedule out. So I have no worries about that. You may not always get the headliner tournament every year, you know, that you would like, but ultimately, you know, you just got to you got to build to the SEC schedule. And we saw that this year. I think we did a really good job of, it was a tough non-conference, but it was very manageable. And I think we built confidence and got wins, got challenged on that trip, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to like, you know, I think it mattered so much to us this year to have that big tournament that I don't want to like miss out. And I think you could theoretically have a decent.
But let's be clear, what Loyola, Syracuse, and UConn wasn't Maui. I mean, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't Maui. It could have been better though. We could have ended up with Michigan State and Baylor. We just lost our first game. But like, you know, and we still played 3 teams that, you know, Syracuse was still a big deal. Loyola made the tournament. UConn made the tournament. You play this next one. I don't think any of those teams. I mean, maybe they make the tournament. I don't know.
Some of them might. The smaller.
Bruce is good at doing that kind of stuff, but
yeah,
I don't know. It's just not a headlining one. I'm going to be excited to watch, like the Bahamas or the Hawaii one. Then there's one in Orlando. There's one in Las Vegas. There's one in Madison Square Garden. There's 2 or 3 other ones even that are decent. You know. So
I'm just Googling trying to, because I know
there's another question I was going to ask you about the Big 12 Challenge.
Yeah.
So do we play Oklahoma again at Oklahoma, or is there like a reset every year?
So okay, so and just so you all know, the schedule for this past season's non-conference schedule was officially like finalized in August. So like, but we're probably gonna have to wait a little while. The Big 12 SEC Challenge, I know they use the conference standings to eliminate the bottom 4 SEC teams. So we will be in it again next year. But I don't think it's as simple as just lining up the records. I could be wrong on this. You might.
Some of them do that. Some of these challenges do that, but Big 12 doesn't. Big 12 Auburn or Big 12 SEC doesn't. They choose like marquee matchups like that Kentucky-Kansas game and Alabama-Baylor. And we end up with Oklahoma because we never go into season hyped enough to get stuff.
So we'll be in it. And I could be wrong. Maybe they've made some adjustment. I just feel like I remember seeing certain times where I don't think it's necessarily 1 to 10.
I was just really hoping like that it was one of those where they do team it up. And because we had the home Big 12 team, we'd get an away Big 12 team. And then we were the number 1 team and Kansas was the number 1 team. And we could plan out a trip to Allen Fieldhouse.
Oh,
that would be cool just as an experience to like go watch Auburn play there. But we might never get that because it'll always be like Kentucky for some reason. I don't know. I'm sure they can't do that every year. They can't do Kentucky, Kansas every year, but they'll try to do something similar. You know, I don't know who we should be up there, but I don't know what else they're nobody else. I guess you know what they do? They would do Arkansas, Kansas, wouldn't they? Guaranteed.
Probably.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get to Texas or something, but I doubt it. But they would do Alabama, Texas, or Kentucky, Texas. They'd try to figure out.
Hey,
we'd end up down the thing playing Kansas State or something.
Let's just run Kentucky, Kansas back every year.
They would do it if they could. If they wouldn't, if everybody else wouldn't, like, I bet you the rest of the SEC presidents, athletic directors, whatever, would be like, can't do this. And they would bow to that and say, all right, we'll do it every other year.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll see if we end up splitting this thing, because it is long, but me and Matt have been holding back, waiting to have our mini discussions and all this different stuff. So
I want you to put out a Twitter poll on our podcast Twitter account that just says, do you think Bruce and Auburn's coaches should try to recruit a better point guard than Wendell Green?
You know what's really funny? Because I like to have these controversial opinions and say this stuff, and then I'll put it on a public podcast, and then wanting to put it out there on Twitter, I just know that like 90% of people will disagree with me, and I don't even want to put it out there. I don't think I'm incorrect, but I know our fan base, and I know that, like, especially publicly, they will defend them. They will say that Barrett Trotter is going to be the next Heisman Trophy guy before they'll admit, like, they would, you know what I'm saying? I think it's the natural instinct to defend your guy, and there's a certain level of people that'll, that'll think I'm crazy until it's over.
Maybe you are.
Maybe I am. Hey, I never said I wouldn't. So
no, I think it's a good argument. I mean, I think you're right. You tend to be very good at these looking ahead things, and I think we're definitely in a moment with the sport. I think the evidence suggests that Bruce and the staff have been ahead of it from day one when NIL started.
I'm always worried that we'll finally fall behind. That's why I'm so adamant about this stuff.
Like,
and
I feel much better.
We've seen it in our other team on the other sport. It's just so far behind the game that I just get a little nervous about our precious basketball,
But you're worried about our guy.
Dude, if Yuri, I'll put it out there. If Yuri Collins, I'm obsessed with Yuri Collins. Yuri Collins is going to stay at St. Louis this whole time or not go anywhere and be awful next year, so they all look so dumb. But if Yuri Collins gets in the transfer portal, I will put it on our Twitter. I will say, would you recruit Yuri Collins at risk of losing Wendell Green? And I'm sure I would still get 75% of the people say, no way, we lose Wendell. Wendell's our guy, blah, blah, blah.
That one, if that's on the table, that might be different.
Yeah, so I think that, because that's what I'm at. I'm not trying to kick Wendell out to go get some other guy. I'm trying to get a dude like Yuri Collins, which I think we have a chance at. So
got to get him in the portal first. Make that call.
JD Davidson, is he in the NBA draft now or no?
I thought
that's how slow everybody's moving. I thought as soon as the NCAA tournament was over, as soon as other people's seasons were over, we would see this huge glut of transfers, different stuff. And I'm surprised how long people are holding out.
That's a good question. I think him and Shibwe are two of the bigger.
Like, are they coming back, guys?
Yeah.
God, I hate it. I'll hate if Oscar comes back, but he will be the perfect guy to come back, honestly, because he doesn't make that much NBA money. But I guarantee Kentucky alumni and NIL people and stuff this will be the case study of come back to Kentucky and you'll make as much money as you would have made if he went to the NBA this year. He's like the perfect guy for that. If he was a different team, if he was on Texas A&M or something and he was that good, he would go on and he would move on and go make more money. But Kentucky is one of the few teams that can legit look him in the eyes, be like, I guarantee you will make just as much money as you would if you went to the NBA right now. And he will actually make that decision because he'll be smart enough to know that it's like he can go another year.
So as of 4 days ago, an Alabama Twitter page said that there were 3 guys still undecided whether they were going to return or leave. J.D. Davison, Javon Quinterly, and Keon Ellis. That's 3 of their top 6 guys.
For some reason, I thought Ellis already left or whatever, but
he might have. That's 4 days ago. So.
I don't know if it was that soon.
But this has like then I see something else where he's like in the late first round. Nate Oates said he has a gut feeling
that's what it was. That's what I saw about this. Nate Oates has been a amazing quote machine for our side recently. He has just been the most negative dude for like months now, like calling out his own players and like talking about how they don't have any effort and they can't seem to figure out how to get them to work harder and like saying crap like, I have a gut feeling our guy's going to leave. Like, who says that?
Nate Oates does.
Yeah, apparently. Well, this is a weird way to end the podcast, but it's a long one. And
hey, SEC champs, good year. Thank everybody for listening. It's been a lot of fun. This would be the ultimate test of your long form
podcast. Yeah, let us know, guys, if you like these long ones or short ones. We're gonna throw it out there long, just to do the test of it. So, all right, everybody, War Eagle.
War Eagle. Keep Wendell Green. Start it trending on Twitter.